Council's webcasting of Council meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on Council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you are in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded and also that you will abide by Council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager have the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches Council's adopted code of meeting practice.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, could I have all those who are able to please stand for the prayer and acknowledgement? Please stand. Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all people in the way of righteousness and peace, so that we may share with justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust and seek the common good. Amen. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. Thank you. General Manager, is there any apologies?
Mr Mayor, there are no apologies.
I have a mover, Councillor North, Councillor Roach. I'll put it there. Those in favour? Carried. Item number 6, which is the mayoral minute. Confirmation of minutes. The ordinary meeting of Bathurst Regional Council. So please have a mover and a seconder. Councillor North, Councillor Fry. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Item number 7, declaration of interest. General Manager, do we have any?
Mr Mayor, I have 3 declarations of interest. One from Councillor Fry in the Director of Planning and Building Services reports, number 3. One from Councillor Hanger in the Director of Engineering Services confidential reports, report number 1. And one from Councillor North in the Director of Corporate Services and Financial Reports, confidential, report number 7.
I have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Hanger, Councillor Jennings. Put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Number 8, the mayoral minute. Councillors, you've all got a copy of the mayoral minute. I thought you would have had it yesterday, a copy of it. Some of you might have. But I moved that minute, and just some of those things out of that minute that are there is the waiving of footpath obstruction fees will be there. It's more on the gift cards by local promotion, and the BMAC annual fees being deferred for them. Those going to BMAC. And there's major capital works that we're mostly aware of. So I'll move that minute. Is there any discussion on it? Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to say I'm glad to see some funding, that extra $10,000 go to the Buy Local gift card program. I think it's an excellent tool for helping to stimulate the local economy. And apart from that, I just wanted to bring to Council's attention, given there's been quite a few comments made about trying to bring manufacturing back to Australia, let alone back to Bathurst. I think we have to do more than just talk about it. Keep our eyes and ears open, and I would just like to bring to Council's attention a new company that is currently based in Port Kembla, New South Wales, hopes to revive the car manufacturing industry in Australia and create up to 5,000 new jobs through the production of a new hydrogen fueled SUV called Snowy 2022. The company is named H2X Australia and has plans to produce a range of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, including everything from people movers to heavy duty vehicles such as tractors and even trains. So that sounds like the sort of thing that we as a motoring town might be interested in. The CEO went on and said that he was sad to see the end of Australia's car manufacturing industry and believes it's time to remind the world of what Australia can do. Couldn't agree more. And if possible, could our council at least get in touch with this company and see what their needs and requests are, and whether or not there's anything we could do to encourage them to have a presence here in Bathurst.
Yes, I'll do that, Councillor Jennings. And also we're talking to more business owners this week, and one of them will be someone in the car industry, so we'll reflect that too. Councillor North.
Yeah, I guess a bit of a sentiment to what Councillor Jen just said at the previous mayoral minute. I request the council look at potential with our industrial land, at looking at possibly reducing the costs of that land and encouraging businesses come in, relocate. One, it's going to be cheaper in the first place. We can provide everything they need. What Councillor Jennings just said, I guess that's one example of many probably examples up here that we could attract. And I said it last meeting, I'd spoken to the federal member at the time, and as he's the minister as far as regional decentralisation, that he made the comment that he thought it was a good idea, and he said both state, federal and local should be working together to encourage businesses to come out to regional areas. So I think that's a great idea. That's probably one of 100 different ones that would love to relocate, and would encourage the council, again, like I said a month ago, that maybe look at our industrial land, potential land that we could support businesses moving here, and that maybe also support with rates. Also, as a member of the District Sport and Rec, and the councillor next to me is also a delegate, that I'm really pleased to see that after a discussion with the General Manager and the Mayor, that the Sport and Rec, with a lot of sport being postponed and even cancelled for the year, that there's ones trying to get going, and they've got a lot of operational costs that they're struggling with. So I'm really pleased to see the proposal, that 20,000 grant, that both Councillor Christian and myself that can work with the Sport and Rec Committee to help those groups out to get through some tough times and try to get people back in the paddock and fit and encouraging sports back. So thank you for that, Mr Mayor.
No, thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just to follow on from what Councillor Jennings was saying, on page 9 of your mayoral minute, we've actually have put our money where our mouth is. We've got $50,000 to attract businesses to Bathurst, a new structured business attraction program. There's also the industry cluster strategy. Now, we had a workshop for that before COVID hit us all. It was a fantastic workshop, but we have funding to carry on with that, which is excellent, and also to fund the startup hub upstairs. And it hasn't started yet, but another 10,000 for that. So we are actually saying that we're not only talking about it, but we're doing it. So well done for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other discussion? No discussion. Then we'll go to the next item. Item number 9 is receive and deal with General Managers and Directors report. Directors of Environment and Planning and Building Services report. Item number 1. Section 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Can I please have a move in a second? Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Number 2 is the general report. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, development application number 2019367. Could I please a declaration of interest in this at all?
John, is that
I've
you?
got it here. Could I please have a move and a seconder first for it? Or John?
Get the declaration.
We'll get the declaration out of the road. John?
Mr Mayor, I've lodged a non-pecuniary interest as I have a cousin who's an objector to the development.
Okay, could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Christian. Any discussion?
Mr Mayor, can I make an amendment, please?
Yes.
Before we start. Could I just, looking at the traffic movements in and out of the proposed development, I'd like to make an amendment that the access on Howick Street is to be designed, constructed and used for entry only. All vehicles exiting the site must do so to Stewart Street only.
Can I get a second?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could I just suggest, seeing the motion has been moved, it might be worth asking the councillors North and Christian if they're happy to have that added to their resolution. That way we won't have to process it as an amendment.
Question?
Yes, you're right.
So if I do accept that, if it isn't passed through, we will go back to the original amendment, original recommendation on this one, Mr. General Manager.
If you accept it as a item and it's defeated, then there'd be nothing on the table and it would be open for someone to move again the original item. So it would be a case of, if you accept it, then it's included. If you don't accept it, then Councillor Orban is free to move an amendment to the motion, and if you can get a seconder, then the amendment will be the first item debated.
Question?
Alex.
Councillor Christian?
Doesn't seem to be working, so I'll speak up.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is this something we can have a look at and see how it goes, and then council can implement no right turn signs? Is that something we can do after having a look without it affecting the deal?
No, left, isn't it? It's what Warren's.
Well, no right turn onto Stewart Street, I think, is the issue.
No exit from the premises.
Well, I understand that, but if we continue to go with the current DA that we're looking at, and vehicles can leave by Howick Street.
We need a second the first time.
Now, this is a question. You're asking
It's
the
a question.
first.
So council could look and see how things go, and if things were an issue, then place a no right turn sign on Stewart Street.
No?
Could I ask the director to come up and my feeling is that you're dealing with the DA as it's presented in front of you, and so you need to put those in as conditions. That doesn't mean, I would think, that in the future, if there are traffic issues, that the traffic committee can't always review traffic signage, so that is possible into the future. But if you're going to expect it to straight away be part of the DA, it would need to be included in the DA.
No, hang on, I'm getting the first question answered to Councillor Christian first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding of the proposal from Councillor Orban does not impact on the intersection, rather the means by which vehicles exit the premises onto Howick Street. The intersection design is not a matter for consideration under the DA, and as the General Manager suggested, it would be a matter separate from your consideration tonight. It would be reasonable to expect that a day will come when that intersection will need to have some sort of treatment with the increase in traffic movements generally with the passage of time. But at this point in time, it's not part of the consideration of the application.
Well, another question from Councillor Morse first.
Yes, please. I just want to know, if this is seconded and passed, how does that impact on the whole development application? Will it mean that you have to go back to another?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's like any development application that comes before council. The staff recommend conditions. It's up to the council to decide whether it wishes to adopt those conditions recommended by the staff or to add other conditions on top of it. What Councillor Orban is doing is, here's the recommendations from the staff. He feels that another item needs to be put in, and what he's seeking is that there is no access out of the Taco Bell development onto Howick Street, that you enter in from Howick Street and you must leave by Stewart Street.
Thank you, General Manager. I would be happy to second it as long as it didn't impact too much on the actual process of the DA. That's all I'm asking.
Well, we haven't got to that yet, so we'll go back to the amendment. You got a question, Councillor Roach? No, or yeah, you'll have that opportunity. Yeah. Right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there is a seconder. The amendment has been moved by Councillor Orban, was seconded by yourself, Councillor Morse. It's open to Councillor Orban now to speak.
Right.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I've brought this amendment into play after visiting the site earlier this week. Just standing at that site and looking at the moment at the situation at another fast food outlet down on George and Durham, I feel we're really letting ourselves in for a problem if we don't set this up properly to start with. It's if we let traffic exit from Howick Street, the major thing they're going to do is do a right turn onto Stewart Street, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most dangerous intersections in town. I will not, and I challenge the people that I take for driving lessons, I challenge them a lot. I will not turn right at that intersection at any time of the day. It is dangerous. And you think of an evening when the lights aren't so good, semi-trailers come down there in the left-hand lane and there's lack of sight distance. It's very dangerous, and we're going to be aiding and abetting that situation. I just feel that the situation that we've got at the moment down at the KFC corner is woeful. It's got traffic going in and coming out of that one driveway. There's traffic turning right coming down George Street. I realise it's not the same amount of traffic, the same volume of George Street that it would be in Howick, but we're creating that same situation. And I don't feel that we should be letting ourselves into that. This place will run very, very busy for the first. They'll have a honeymoon period. It's new to town. It's new food. It's not a duplication of any other place that's in town. It will be busy. And if we start off and let this happen, that there's traffic just going everywhere at that intersection, then I'm sorry, I won't put my name to it. You also find traffic coming off the highway, either if they're turning right to go up Howick or if they're coming down the highway turning left into Howick, go at a fairly fast pace, because the ones turning right are usually getting quick to beat traffic, oncoming traffic. And that's going to cause a situation also with the traffic queuing to turn into Taco Bell. I just have a feeling of this intersection, and I think one cure is not let exiting onto Howick Street. I'd like to hear your opinions, but that's where I see it at this stage. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd love to see Taco Bell come to Bathurst, and I'm supportive of any business seeking to open its doors here. However, I feel that the development site is not consistent with the objectives of the R1 General Residential Zone under the Bathurst Regional Local Environment Plan 2014, where it actually states, to enable a commercial development that is compatible with the amenity of the area. You simply cannot compare the motel, the lead light business or craft shop with the Taco Bell restaurant, seating up to 40 people with takeaway and drive-through service available. This restaurant will be open from 10 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. weekdays, and then those hours are extended to 11 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. The noise generated by the development as a result of these hours of operation will have high traffic and pedestrian activity added to the drive-through being close to the neighbouring dwellings. It's more likely to affect the amenity of the residential areas. Insufficient information has been submitted to Council to determine the odour generated by the development, and that will have an impact on the amenity of the surrounding residential area. This is a conservation area. Residents should feel some safety net is available to them in this space. You may well say residents have trucks barrelling down the highway all day and all night, and more than likely bought their property knowing that that noise was there. But they did not consider the additional impact of Taco Bell on their daily lives. Residents will be affected by extended hours, noise and odour. Food and drink premises could and does range from a modest takeaway to a corner store like the hospital shop. Taco Bell, in my opinion, is the extreme end. Re the objectives of the R1 general residential zone as stated. And I was going to talk about the traffic, but thank you, Councillor Orban, you've done that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Any other? Councillor Morse?
Just to check that we are actually still debating the amendment, Mr Mayor.
Yes, we are.
I would like to support the amendment because, for a start, I raised this issue with Councillor Orban quite as a person not nearly so experienced in traffic matters as Councillor Orban. And we discussed it because he is very aware of all the intersections in Bathurst through his experience as training learner drivers. And he is on the traffic committee. And I think that we have to acknowledge that that group and Councillor Orban's experience should be listened to in this context. But I certainly was concerned about it before I got his advice, so I would really like to support this amendment to not having an exit from the Taco Bell into Howick Street. It should be an entry only. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other? Councillor Christians?
Yeah, look, I certainly agree that there's potential for an issue, Mr Mayor. However, I'd hate to see it negatively affect this DA. I'd say jobs, jobs, jobs. We're coming out of COVID, and I think, you know, anything that brings jobs to this city, particularly for young people, is too precious to potentially lose. They've already done a tremendous amount of work on their DA to appease some of the concerns. But like I said earlier, if we do leave it as an exit onto Howick Street and it does become an issue, we should do what this council has failed to do and put a no right-hand turn sign onto Stewart Street, which I believe through the RMS, with enough pressure, we should be able to do. KFC is a mess. Every single councillor here has identified that that is a mess, but not one of us have done anything to fix it. We whinge about it. We've done absolutely nothing to fix that intersection by simply putting in a no right-hand turn lane. And I think that's what we should do if this becomes an issue.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor Nord?
Two questions. I just want to probably hear from the director what the traffic committee's feelings were, knowing that there's state member reps, there's RMS reps, there's engineers reps, there's police reps on that committee. And is there potential with the fear of it that, you know, we all have said about that turning right? I'm the same as Councillor Orban, you know, never turn right there. That is a fear. And I think the KFC should be fixed up by a load of concrete down the second. But second question is that can, if it was coming out, can a barrier of concrete so the cars must go left? Is that a potential fix that we could have if they do come out? Is there a barrier there? So anyone coming down the street who wants to go right but currently is allowed by the RMS can go right, but anyone coming out of Taco Bell, and I think we did it to a degree at what is it, West Point Shopping Centre, when they're coming out on Sutter Street there, but those cars must go left. Can we put, I'm thinking of a word like barrier, like concrete, that it forces them to go left down the highway once they come left out of. So those two questions. What did the traffic committee say, and can we do that work?
Through you, Mr Mayor, this particular development was not referred to the Traffic Committee. It's been referred to Transport for New South Wales. So that the Traffic Committee has delegated authority from Transport for New South Wales. However, Transport for New South Wales have been consulted directly over the development and have provided their input, which has been included in the conditions of consent that are suggested for your approval. With regard to the second question, given the proximity to the RMS control or Transport for New South Wales controlled intersection, any work in that area on the road would more than likely require Transport for New South Wales consent.
Well, you can speak, ask questions. Right, yeah.
So in the deliberations, information with Transport New South Wales, sorry, I keep saying RMS before, they gave a great deal of attention, did they, or not? Or were they more interested in the highway setup rather than the Howick Street setup?
That's possibly also a question that the Director of Planning would also add some comment, but I'm sure that the involvement of Transport for New South Wales has considered the development, certainly the impact on the highway and how traffic would enter and leave it. But given the intersection is and the operation of the Taco Bell site is very close to the intersection, it would be considered as to how it would operate.
Through Mr Mayor, I can confirm that there were extensive discussions with Transport for New South Wales over an extended period of time. The applicant amended their plans in respect of traffic movements as a consequence. That focus was not just the highway, but the performance of the intersection with Howick Street, and therefore the right turn movement is in fact included in the commentary from Transport for New South Wales.
Yes.
Okay, I guess one more question. The Director of Engineering, you said that it probably because of the proximity to the highway, but if we as a council feel that it is a safety issue and we can suggest a measure that controlling things like that are out there in the community in different cities to make sure cars do that by a concrete run, wouldn't you think the RMS would encourage? Yeah, okay, they've given it great consideration, I guess, to both directors. This is directed at the question, wouldn't you think that if we could make it even safer until we get that intersection reviewed, would be a good measure to put that sort of thing in?
I'll wait till he deals with this one first.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I wouldn't mind just asking for a bit more clarification over the concept which Councillor North is proposing. Have I read it correctly that there be an engineering on-the-ground solution which directs how cars exit the site?
Yes.
I will hand over to Director of Engineering shortly, but my understanding is that if it's to be used for ingress entry, and that includes service vehicle entry, there may well be difficulties in the design of such a feature.
Before you sit down, I might just get the question from Councillor Orban to you first.
Sort of a question but an answer, right? So if you're going to direct traffic from Howick Street coming out to turn left on the highway, they're exiting on the highway anyway. There's an exit already. So that would be of no use whatsoever.
Okay. You finished, Councillor North?
Oh, not a question, just commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, like Councillor Orban said, we've spoken about this, and yeah, I had some concerns about the safety of that intersection. One of the other things that I had a concern with it, I stood there and looked at the traffic coming down on Stewart Street, and I look at the old tree that's in there and I see that as a blind spot, and I would encourage, if this was to go through, that tree be removed and take any potential blind spot coming, exiting the Taco Bell site, looking up Stewart Street, because, you know, Councillor Orban is right, the movement, and I'm not sure if the speed has always been followed down there. And the other issue that I have, when visiting a number of sites, it just seems to be when people have fast food places, they just seem to see a bit of garden and they throw every bit of their rubbish in the garden. And I guess it would be in their site management that site management, a regular thing, that area on the northern side where the flats are, that bit of landscaped area in there is a regular area that daily is reviewed and cleaned out, as well as potential conditions or that in the operations if it was to go through.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the amendment, councillors? Councillor Jennings.
I just want to add my support to the amendment. I think having that be a much cleaner, neater solution as a one-way drive-through, and we should definitely do it now, not wait till it becomes an annoyance and a hassle and a pain. Put it into this motion and let's get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Is there any other councillor discussion on the amendment? If not, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? It's a division. Those against? Carried. Oh, do you want to read out the amendment at all? Before you go?
Mr. Mayor, I now have the motion as what is typed. And then if you go to page 25 of your report, C now becomes the access on Howick is to be designed, constructed and used for entry only. All vehicles exiting the site must do so to Stewart Street only. Then C becomes D and D becomes E.
Just question about the tree. Did that be put in there?
No, the amendment, we've dealt with the amendment. So that's the one we're doing. Huh?
We haven't looked at, because that is a blind spot. If you're talking about safety, it's
Yes, we're on to the original.
No,
it's
to Mr. Mayor, the amendment has now been put, has been carried. It now becomes the motion. Now it's up to council to decide if they wish to debate the amendment, which is now the motion, or just to vote on it. That's a matter for the council. If you wish to debate, then Councillor Orban has the right to speak, and being that he is the mover of the motion, he has the right to reply.
Right. Is there any discussion? Well, question first, Councillor North.
Okay, seeing the motion is there, if move and second to accept it, can I have another point added in that tree gets removed?
Well, that's up to the mover and the second. There was Councillor Orban and Morse. No, that was. We dealt. The amendment. Okay. Now I'm asking the mover, which is Councillor Orban, do you want to add the tree or not? Okay. Now we've got an amendment to the become part of the motion. Now we're putting the motion now.
Just a sec. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd probably need to seek a little bit of advice from the director. Are we able to, because this will be a tree that's on the orange side, I'm assuming, of the intersection with Howick Street.
No.
Which tree?
It's on the Stewart Street side. As soon as you come out the exit point, there's a tree sitting right there. It's on your left.
I do. No, it's on your left, Councillor North.
Sorry, you're talking about a tree on the corner of Howick and Stewart Street?
It's in the middle of Stewart Street where the exit point's going to be. Yeah, that's on the left. Director planning, you know the tree. I spoke to you about this.
All right. Let the director answer this. Councillor North.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the tree in question is a single tree that's underneath the power line in Stewart Street. The driveway is on the Howick Street side of that tree, just. I'm not sure if on the site visit we explained that as clearly as we might have. So I'm just referring to the plans, councillors, and the existing tree is shown on the driveway will be on the Howick Street side of the existing tree. So
I'm so confused, but when we were here the other day, I asked and you said it's right next to the tree, and you said the driveway's moved closer to the tree.
Well, you've got the plans in front of you. Is the tree you're asking for going to affect, what he's asking, will the tree affect the entrance going in and out there, Director?
No, Stewart Street just out.
Just out.
So Mr. Mayor, if it would be of help, I can just walk past with the plans and just identify where I believe the tree is. And if there was some misunderstanding or I communicated incorrectly on the site visit, there's an apology there for that.
Yes, you can.
Just given that we're looking at moving the one-way amendment that Councillor Orban's already had approved, will that affect where that driveway is in any way, shape or form, which would then affect the proximity of the tree?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe I can't see a reason why it would affect that. But whether the proponent, the developer, has some other opinion on that, of course, we have not canvassed.
Yes, question, Councillor Christian.
Yeah, there's some conversation in regards to it being an inappropriate site for Taco Bell. Hypothetical question, but one nonetheless, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning. This site could be a 24-hour petrol station, could it not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to take some of that detail on notice because it would require me to check the land use table for that zone in the LEP to be precise. So I'd rather have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. One more question.
All right, I'll try and get a couple in. Okay, well, was this site once a petrol station?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is the case. It has a history of commercial use of different types of commercial use.
Councillor Fry.
Just a question on the motion and the amendment. On page 104, it says the Transport New South Wales is saying the development would not result in any adverse impacts on pedestrian safety. Was that based on any knowledge of the amount of pedestrians that this development would generate? And in the director's opinion, would not there be school children and a whole other bunch of pedestrians? I know it's basically a vehicular facility.
Just say, Councillor Fry, we're discussing the tree first. We've had the discussion on the Taco Bell entrances and that. We're discussing the tree. Would you like to say something on the tree?
Well, the tree's on the left, doesn't need to be removed. Sorry, I had a question on the amendment in the motion about pedestrian safety.
Right. We'll continue then.
So the question to the director is, what level of confidence do you have as one of the assessors that it won't adversely affect pedestrian safety? That given that the development, I believe, will generate extra pedestrians.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a difficult question to give absolute confidence. However, the intersection does have what are presumably adequate means for pedestrian access across the highway. It's also a drive-through facility, so it's perhaps questionable the amount of pedestrian traffic that will be walking there. There will presumably be some. We do rely on the advice of experts, and the traffic assessment has indicated, has drawn the conclusion that's before you.
Thank you. That it was mentioned that we might review the intersection over time. Is it possible to review it now? Because we could end up with the same situation as KFC is now. Now we're reviewing it. We're finding it difficult to deal with. Couldn't we just predict that we're going to have the same problems as KFC and fix it now rather than review it later?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, short answer is yes, that can be done, but it does require a prediction of a future scenario, and that's possible. But I think the question before you is, do you burden this development with a requirement to improve that intersection now, when that intersection, of course, is used by many more road users than that development will generate? In other words, you need to be confident that there's a direct nexus between that development and the creation of a unsatisfactory level of service at the intersection at a known point in time in order to have the confidence to require as a condition of consent now.
Thank you.
Might just ask for a clarification out of your question.
The director did suggest to me
Okay. Okay. Councillor Moss.
Well, I was just going to ask whether we'd finished with the tree issue, because when we stood there and looked at it, it really was a very sad tree in the sense that the power lines go right through it, and it was winter and there were no leaves and it looked a bit sad. If you're talking about removing the tree...
No, we're finished with the tree now, so...
We're finished with the tree?
Yes.
So I was going to say, let's replace it with something better.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Moss. Right. Well, we'll go back to any more discussion.
On the actual whole thing?
Yes, on the whole thing.
I would like to say something.
Okay, Councillor Moss.
One of the comments that I've been hearing in the community is that this council has been anti-development and that we've been making things difficult for Taco Bell. But actually, I'd like to say, no, we haven't made things difficult for Taco Bell. We have considered this proposal and gone to great lengths to assist the developers and discuss issues with the developer. The fact that there are 87 conditions on the development reflect the work that's gone into the research and the discussion. I think as councillors we have to be very careful that we bring an objective view to the benefits or drawbacks of a fast food outlet. Now I can sympathise with people who were in Howick Street and they now find themselves near a fast food outlet. But I can appreciate, and I think most of us can, how much Taco Bell have been prepared to listen to councils and residents' concerns. And I think that it will be great for employment. A lot of people had said to me, it's employment for young people. So I would really like to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, just echoing basically what Councillor Morse is saying, but I'd just like to add that there is a BP service station just up the road, which I think is almost identical to the site that we're dealing with here. And I believe that's a 24-hour BP. So you've got trucks coming in and refueling and cars going in and out all the time. So I just want to make that point. Look, it is a very loud area. I was quite shocked. I went to the site with some councillors and the trucks and buses, and it is a really, really loud area. And I suppose it shouldn't surprise anybody because I think it's just about the second busiest road this side of the Blue Mountains. So it's a perfect spot for a Taco Bell. I can see why they're very attracted by this particular site. They have done a lot to address the concerns in relation to the neighbours with noise and things like that. They're going to be planting shrubs. They're going to be putting up noise barriers, things like that. Now, we keep look, the intersection could become an issue, and we keep comparing it to the KFC intersection. Well, again, I think that intersection is just about the busiest intersection or the second busiest intersection in Bathurst. We're comparing the Howick Street and Stewart Street intersection in the exact same light as we're comparing the Durham Street and George Street intersection, which is a problem. However, it is incredibly busy. Now, I would hate to, I suppose, risk a backflip or anything like that in regards to this DA by putting further conditions on them at this point. I agree with what Councillor Auburn's saying. If you leave the exit on Howick Street and you turn left, you can only then turn left again to get on the highway anyway. So it probably doesn't make a whole lot of point. However, I think we can mitigate the risk of causing any issues in regards to this DA by seeing how it goes and then adding what either Councillor North suggested or what I've suggested, which is a no right-hand turn onto Stewart Street. Jobs, 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 like I said. This is something that we don't want to muck around with. All of us here come election time, if you want it done, I'm number one, and less dithering, more delivering, and we all make out that we're going to get things happening in this city. Well, I think we have identified a concern which may become an issue. I say may become an issue, and I think we can deal with that later on down the track if need be. I don't want to put any, I just don't want to risk this because it's going to create a number of jobs, and I think it's only the third one in New South Wales. So they've identified Bathurst as an attractive option. We're open for business. We're getting the new Harvey Norman site, Porto's coming here. So Bathurst is a really, really attractive site, and we don't want to become fascistic in regards to DAs. We want to make sure things are done properly, but we don't want to make things hard for people. Young people are going to work here, And I just think it's very exciting for the city. They've bent over backwards. They've actually lost space in their building. So I think they've lost probably 4 or 5 metres maybe from the original DA. So that's floor space that they've given up. But they've made a tremendous effort here, and I think we should support it. I don't think we should risk delaying it, as this council does so incredibly often, is delay, and later on we're talking about an issue we dealt with 2 years ago. We need to get on with business.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Councillor Roach.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, okay, we are open for business, but we also do need to consider residents as well and people that live there. I would like to put this forward and ask any councillor here, would you like Taco Bell near you or near the area that you're living with the hours that they're contemplating and operating? I don't think you can compare them to a 24-hour. You know, like you've got seating for 40 people in there. You don't drive through and make an order for your petrol. You're going to have a lot more people, you're going to have a lot more noise, and I think that this is going to impact, not only traffic-wise, it's going to impact on that area of the city. And yes, we are open for business, but we do need to be very careful. And the reason that these people or the developers here have had to put so many modifications, or the planning have had to put so many modifications, is because of the site that they've chosen. If they'd gone to Gateway or other site like that where A Porto has gone, they probably wouldn't have had the amount of difficulty that they've had. And yes, we've tried to work with them, or I know Neil has tried to work with them, the Director of Planning. His staff have tried to work with them, and they've done a good job. But honestly, this is going to impact that area of Bathurst, and I think you need to have a very long think about what that's going to do to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Any more discussion? Councillor North.
Any development that comes to town, we've got to take whatever type of business it is. We need to look at it clearly. We need to look at it to forward in the future. We've also, when we look forward in the future, we've got to be careful we don't make assumptions. It will, and this will happen, Been here long enough to know that a lot of people said that when the new shopping centre went in, Bathurst is not ready for it. There will be vacant shops everywhere in town. It won't get filled up. I've heard things like that time and time again. You know, there's too many hairdressers, there's too many of this, and there's another one in town. But one thing I do know that is standard for this city is extremely resilient, and this city does continue to grow and does attract businesses and all types of business. I was blown away. I've never been to Taco Bell in my life. I didn't know anything about them. You know, who am I to say which side is best for them? They come to our city, and obviously they were doing reconnaissance and going around and looking and saying that would suit our purposes. They looked at our code and said, well, it fit amongst the code. They probably looked at landscape in the area. And if you want to go up the road, the end of Howard Street, there used to be, I think it was called a gentleman's club, and there was a squash court and a lot of vacant land. There's some now 2-story dwellings there. I think 2 and 3 bedrooms, multiple more cars than there ever were there before. There's a corner that hasn't been finished, which is obviously going to be another unit. You know, was it the right thing? Was it the right development? You know, it fitted in. All of a sudden you had no one living there, and all of a sudden you got a lot of other people living there. There's a lot of things that have occurred in this town that changes the feel, the structure of the area. And, you know, the question is, would I? Well, I've never lived next to one, so I'm not sure. So it's hard to state. But everything I've read and the correspondence given to me and the people I did talk to, you know, they had valid concerns. But one thing I know as a councillor, when I come in here to make a decision, I'll look at the reports that are put before me. And, you know, even there today, it showed that discussions with a director, you know, we misunderstood each other there the other day. Look, that can happen. But I look at the code. I look at what can be done. I look at the work they've done. I look at the advancement of Bathurst and the different types of projects. I think, you know, yes, there is potential to have impact. There was potential when McDonald's came to town. There was potential when KFC came to town. You know, I look at a number of corners around town at a particular businessman who's no longer with us, but he looked at these sites from service stations, well, 2 were service stations, actually 3, and they got redeveloped in businesses that attract a hell of a lot of traffic movements coming in, on and off the highway. Yep, slightly different structure at the type. There's a lot of businesses around there, but it's not far away. We've got to look at what the code allows, and are they answering to the code? And I guess like a lot of things we do, and councillors here will also know, is that how many times have we had, and I've said it before and I'll continue to say it, a consultants report that says this and a consultants report that says that, and you think these guys and ladies have got the same degrees and they'll give us 2 different answers. So everyone's always going to have, you know, their for and against. But I'm looking at it for what it is, and I understand it can have an impact. I understand that, but I think we as a council have got to look at the fact that this business has looked at Bathurst and said we want to build in Bathurst and create a future in Bathurst, and I can see why. We've got a future. And that's what we've got to look at, and we've got to respect the residents. And if we are having problems, and problems are coming to us that, you know, whether it's noise or whatever, it's not working, I know we can go to the... Is that a minute left or whatever? Yep. I know we can go to the director and the general manager and the mayor of the day and say, look, we're not concerned here. Can we ask our staff to get in, put monitors out and look at it? The codes are put in place to follow, and you know, I've got to trust, and we're going to talk about other matters later on tonight, that, you know, if we get reports in front of us and consultants come in, we've got to understand that both sides, that one's going to, of course, going to be supporting this and one's going to be supporting that. But we've got to look at the facts in front of us. What Councillor Orban said tonight is right. You know, I avoid that intersection, and I was wondering what best we could do. If that modification in place puts in jeopardy, I'm really disappointed. But you know, we're elected to do a job, and yeah, I voted for that. I understand where Councillor Orban is coming from, because you know, we lost a life, you know, in the corner many years at Christmas time when going across a highway intersection can be damn dangerous. So I think this council can either get an extra time.
Yes.
Yep. Where is it? It's over there. Sorry. But I would put it on notice that we need to continue reviewing this, both on a noise matter, on an odour matter, on a traffic management matter, because I think if we approve it, we've approved a modification, that we've got to understand that we've got to make sure that we adhere to the residents in the area that have been there for many, many years, and make sure their lives aren't altered. But I was like Councillor Christian, when you stood around there, and I think we were there for about an hour that day, and it was amazing, the traffic noise. I was absolutely blown away. You know, I haven't walked down that way for a long time. I'll probably have to start doing it. I was blown away about the amount of noise that is on that corner already. So I think the notice is, if this does get passed tonight, that we as council need to make sure we monitor those main areas of traffic, noise and order moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor North. Any other? Councillor Jennings?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just wanted to add that the impact on residents is evidently real. It is definitely going to have an impact. I also wanted to add that, you know, the comments that are made by our heritage community, who pay close attention to this, I think the comments they've all made are valid as well. You know, I really don't like, I think all those big icon signs up Durham Street do nothing for our town. They turn us into a cookie cutter of every other small to medium-sized town in America, Canada, and quite a few other Western countries. For a town that's looking to identify itself and differentiate itself on heritage terms, having another American franchise come to town is not going to help that. Having said that, I'm actually a bit surprised that the impact of this DA hasn't created a greater stir or greater opposition to it. It is on the highway, and it is relatively in keeping with what goes on Durham Street already. So my overall fear is that if it was to be rejected tonight, it would very quickly end up in the Land Environment Court, and I personally suspect it would be easily approved by the Land and Environment Court. And on that basis, we as councillors always have to make a judgment call about the compromise that's being presented. And in this case, because I don't think we really have a choice in this matter, will be supporting the overall development.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Is there any other discussion? If not, the right of reply there, Councillor Orban.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, apart from that amendment that I made, I'm all in favour of this DA. It's, as other councillors have said, it's bringing jobs to the city, which are much needed right now. I'm obviously stuck on that amendment because I think, from my assertion, looking at that intersection, we do not want it turning into something else. We've already got problems. There's people whinging all the time, you know, that they're turning in and out of the shopping centre adjacent to Mitre 10. The KFC corner, Dan Murphy's was an absolute disaster, all put through on DAs. We don't want to replicate all of those. We need to do this right from now. So I think that's a positive step. You know, one of the submissions from a resident mentioned ambulance movements could be restricted with the traffic on that intersection. Well, obviously, ambulance movements go up and down Howick Street, mostly up with the sirens going. So there's quite a bit of noise going out of that all the time. You know, that's 24/7. So, you know, yes, as Councillor Jennings has said, there will be noise. There will be impact on some residents in that area. We appreciate that. But it's a DA that has approval, and I think its recommendation for me is let's put this through, let's get on with it, and hopefully it all goes well.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Now, councillors, I'll put the motion and call a division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Okay, we're going to item number 4, Bathurst Regional Local Environment Plan 2014, Amendment number 15. Could I please have a mover and a seconder?
Page 108, councillors.
Councillor North, Councillor Christians. Is there any discussion? No discussion? Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 5, Renewable Energy Action Plan. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to commend the Director's Department for producing this and processing all the vast amount of submissions we had. It just shows there's an incredibly high level of interest in renewable energy and subsequently in climate change and adaptation. A question to the Director is, if we adopt this plan as it's presented, are we able to treat it as a living document so we can, because of the nature of rapid change in the renewables industries, I don't think it's a document we should lock down. I think it should be a document that's open and we can constantly review it because of the nature of the industry. So is that possible, Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. And indeed, there's two mechanisms in the report which I'll draw Council's attention to. The first is that should you adopt the plan as now presented to you, there's an inbuilt mid-plan review for 2023. So that time will fly. And yes, we have a very dedicated team of staff always keeping up to date with trends in the industry. The second point is that in the attachment, that framework for other work which can be done in addition to the Renewable Energy Action Plan, that too represents an ongoing and continuous review process.
Yes, Councillor Fry.
I recall that the REAP doesn't really extend itself to addressing climate change as such. are we able to get a timeline on when we might produce a specific report that addresses climate change, including energy and water, and the impacts it will have going forward on Bathurst? That some sort of a more comprehensive document that will be an adjunct to the REAP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer to that question will depend on the resources that are made available to complete those tasks. With the present level of resources, these things will take some time. I'd like to think that we'd be having a productive conversation about some of this stuff over the next 12 months, but at this stage, Mr. Mayor, I'm unable to commit to a particular timeline.
Thank you, Director. You finished there, Councillor Fry. Councillor Christian?
Just a quick question, but I'll preface it by saying that I think renewable energy is a good thing if it's reliable. I think most people can agree with that, solar panels and that sort of thing. My first question is, did this come about due to a councillor's inquiry, or is this a bureaucratic report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, neither. The report is, I think, a pretty solid business case for any organisation to consider. It's brought about for various motives. One is not just the business case, that it's a good investment in many ways. Secondly, council needs to procure energy on a competitive basis, and so it is in the market for the supply of electricity. I think it's safe to say that the number of submissions and the weight of the submissions is a pretty good indicator of public opinion, and that I believe that's becoming even more persuasive in the last 12 months.
Thank you.
Could I just add to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but the creation of the REAP was in response to a resolution of this council to develop one.
Yes, Councillor Christian?
There was a famous hoo-ha in this chamber, I don't know, 6-7 months ago in regards to the climate change debate. And I've just noticed that wording is in there. Now, I'm just wondering, yes, the Renewable Energy Action Plan is a good thing and it's a sound business model. I'm just wondering, yeah, the term climate change is used in there. And I'm just not sure, has council established a position, a voted on position in regards to climate change? Or is that just something that a bureaucrat's put in there?
Could you just answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, hesitate to agree that that's something the bureaucrats have put there. Council did resolve to progress in that direction, climate change adaptation and mitigation plan. What that part of the recommendation asks is for council to come to its position, and council staff will be bringing some of that content to you to enable that position to be set.
Okay, any more discussion? Councillor Morse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think council has to be congratulated for putting so much resources into looking at renewable energy. People who don't acknowledge climate change must have their head in the sand. It's a commonly used phrase. We all know about it. We all know that people don't like it. We know people that do like it. But it's here. And renewable energy is the way to go. We hear about it in so many ways, which companies have done this, which companies have done that, which houses. If you look around Bathurst, the number of houses with solar panels is quite extraordinary. So the ordinary man, woman in the street knows that climate change is here. Councillor Christian might have objected to the word change in climate, change of climate, or climate change. Let's be upfront. Council is responsible for looking at the effects of climate change. And so I applaud the work that's being done, the continuing work that's being done. And I know from first-hand experience how interested people are, not just in solar panels, but in Tesla batteries. That's a bit way off when we get the batteries that are cheaper. But we must, as a council, look forward, not just to next year, but for the next 5 years, and to bring renewable energy into the operations of council. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor North?
Firstly, I think Councillor Fry is right in the fact that it will be a living, breathing document that will always be reviewed. And I think one thing that well, I think we all agreed as his councillors that, I think we're looking at a sustainable future for this council, and we're looking at our design of housing, our structure of our subdivisions, how they'll be managed, looked after, water harvesting. I think, what terminology we want to do, I think this council, and I've said it before in this chamber, I think we had half an environmental officer, and we've got a number of environmental officers now doing a lot of good work. Whether the tag is put on or whatever, I think this council, you've got to say, renewable action plans been put in place, councils to listen to. We've got drought management plans, we're reviewing our documents moving forward. We're looking at our type of housing, our roads, and everything we do. And I think whatever name you've got it, I think this council is consistently looking at what we do, how we do it. And I think the one terminology I'll consistently use is a sustainable future for this region as its residents. And I think documents like this do it. So I'm pleased to see it, and let's keep it going.
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any other councillor? Councillor Jennings, do you want to write a reply? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to the Director of Corporate Services and Finance report. Item number 1, Statement of Investments. Councillor Christian, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. Carried. Item number 2 is the monthly review, delivery plan and operational plan. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, Sundry Section 356 donations, Bathurst Memorial Entertainment Centre, Community and Use Subsidy and Mount Panorama Fee Subsidy. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Roach. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, Power of Attorney. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor Hanger. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to item number 5 now, submissions of the draft delivery plan 2020-2024 and operational plan 2020-21. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christian, Councillor North. Any discussion? Oh, yes. We'll go through them. Yeah, I haven't got them. No. Hang on. This one here. Right. Good. Okay. Item number 1, expenditure on villages. Any discussion? A mover and a second. Moved, Councillor.
That the information be noted and no amendment be made to the delivery plan.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right. Item number. One down the bottom. Oh, yeah. Item number 2. It's a submission by Mr. Bathgate. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Jennings. Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion? No discussion. Put the motion. Those in favour? Those against?
Councillor, it's the item that is listed on the bottom of page 122. So it's 2. No, that's the points that were made in the submission, and the recommendation is on page 125, just under the table.
We're doing this one here now.
dealing with number 3. No, they've all been dealt with now. So you're now dealing with this one.
So you're right there, councillors, now? Okay, item number 3 now. On various items by the Bathurst Heritage Network. A mover and a second, Councillor Jennings, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion, moved, carried. Right, we go to the bottom of page.
Mr Mayor, you're now on the top of page 127, item number 4, funding for business case for the Bathurst Regional Centre for Military History.
Right, move Councillor North. Yes.
I'd look that the council look at there's a 30,000 request, so council fund 15,000 towards the review document as far as the affordability for the creation of it, and council seek the other 15,000 in grant funding.
I have a second for that. Councillor Jennings. Is there any discussion? Councillor Morse.
A question, Mr Mayor, could I please ask the Director of Corporate Services, if we take an extra 15,000 out of our current budget, do we have to remove something of 15,000?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I take it that the 15,000 that's being funded by council is coming out of our current budget surplus, projected to be 27,000.
Clarify, so it comes out of this year's budget. Okay.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I have that the delivery plan 2020 to 2024 and the operating plan 2020-21 be amended to include funding of 15,000 for a business case for the proposed Bathurst Regional Centre for Military History to be funded from the proposed budget surplus for 2021 and seek a further 15,000 in grant funds.
Okay, Councillor Jennings.
Just want to speak to that motion, Mr Mayor. Firstly, yes, it would also encourage not just grant funding, but any contributions from the appropriate community groups, such as, for example, the RSL or other sources that are supportive of this project. I'd also want to just highlight, I guess, the fact that this is an excellent way in which this council can leverage resources and funding into this region by only spending a relatively small amount of seed funding on getting a business case up. We can then down the track make the case or make the decision as to whether or not this could or should be a council project. And there is absolutely nothing that commits us to that at the moment. But what it does do is put a business case on the table. And if that business case is an attractive looking investment, it could potentially attract private investment or not-for-profit investment, other community sources, as well as grant funding to become yet another museum that would add to our fine collection. So this is a very good way for council to actually stimulate something with a bit of seed funding, and with any luck, it's a good business case, and it's one that appeals and will actually bring some more money into the region over the life of the future project.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to speak against this because it's a very good presentation to council. It's a good submission to council. But there are other projects in Bathurst which we've not been asked to consider in terms of which would we prefer to do from 1 to 10. There are lots of museums that would like funding. There's an agricultural museum. There's money that could be well spent up at the old ag research station. And I just think to pick this one out of the air when it's not in section 356 is very unwise. I don't think we've considered this in conjunction with other museums. Is a military museum in Bathurst worthwhile? I don't know. Is it? And there was a picture outside the ambulance station giving people the idea that that's where council has decided to put it. No, we haven't. I think this is very, very unwise to say that $30,000 should be spent on one museum when Bathurst is not known as a military centre. I'm really against this funding of 15,000 when we have our section 356 donations discussed every year. we knock back really, really worthwhile causes. We sit there and make really hard decisions on what can be funded and what can't be funded. And for this to pop up out of the blue, 15,000, I think is grossly unfair and unwise.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Hanger.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Is this $15,000 for the museum or for a business case to see if we
It's
need
for a
museum?
business case,
That's what
Councillor
I thought.
Hanger,
Thank you.
not for a museum.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? If not, yes, you can.
Yeah, just want to make it very clear, and thank you, Councillor Hanger. It is for a business case. It hasn't come out of the blue. A lot of things presented to us as councillors are presented to us, and we make personal decision whether it wants to move ahead. Were we a centre that could handle Sir Elton John? Yes, we are, and we're going to handle new ones moving into the future. What the future holds for Bathurst, well, I don't want to shut the door on that, and I want to have the potential that we could be a centre working with places like Canberra to have a wonderful museum and to honour the men and women that have served this country in the past and now. So it's a business case. It hasn't come out of the blue. We're consistently evolving as a council, and I think Councillor Jennings said extremely well that this could be a good chance with seed funding to bring another dimension to Bathurst like we've done on many other things in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor North. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion there. Those. Yep.
Mr Mayor, I have it that the delivery plan 2020 to 2024 and the operating plan 2020-21 be amended to include funding of $15,000 for a business case for the proposed Bathurst Regional Centre for Military History, to be funded from the proposed budget surplus for 2020-21, and also seek a further $15,000 in grant funds.
Okay, now I'll put that to you. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 5, toilet block near the playground at Rankins Bridge, Eglinton. Councillor Christians. Councillor Orban. Any discussion? Councillor Christian.
I will vote with the recommendation. However, I think it's really important that that we keep this particular project sort of written down somewhere so we can have a look at it next year. Because I think it just makes perfect sense having a toilet down there. I've heard it a number of times now that people have issues walking and spending time down there, but there are no toilet facilities. So that's a really good idea from Ms McAllister.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Okay, we go to item number 6, the go-kart track. Councillor North. Yeah. Oh, I put it to you, yes. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 6 now, the go-kart track. Councillor, yes.
I'll make it clear what I want, but this remains that the go-kart track is right.
You're right.
No, yep. But go-kart track is a project above the line, and council seeks complete funding of that track from grant funding from state and federal.
I'll get a second. Councillor Christian. Right, is it? Yeah.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, or an addition, that council investigate alternative locations for the go-kart track.
Point of
No,
order.
yes.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the first request by Councillor Morse is, would the mover consider adding that to his motion? And if not, you may care to... Yeah.
My answer to it is no, based on the fact that I have a councillor to my right that has actually got a notice of motion later on that discusses alternative sites. My motion is simply to have the project like I did, what was it, 6 weeks ago, that it's placed above the line, and we seek funding for the go-kart track of that figure of $4.5 million. I am talking nowhere in my motion about the site, and nor will I add it to that because it is to be discussed later on tonight.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Just to clarify, I guess, it seems to me that this current item number 6 is actually going to happen anyway. Is perhaps the General Manager or Director of Corporate Services could explain that regardless of the other motion that we're debating later tonight, as this stands here, if this motion was passed as is, that the go-kart track remains unfunded below the line, grant funding or not, our council would still be pursuing grants if they were to come up that were appropriate for the go-kart club track.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as definitely, and I think I've already advised councillors that when I sent an email several weeks ago, if there's a project on our books and we feel that there is an opportunity to get grant funds, then as a council we'll apply for those. And the good example was that most recent round of the BBRF, where we got money for the dog pound. It was a project the council had given its imprimatur to. So we've been seeking money for a long time. Another good example is the collections facility. We've been chasing grant funds for that for about 3-4 years and probably even longer, and we got the 2.3 million. So in terms of the go-kart facility, the position that I have as the general manager is that a project has been approved by the council there, and that has been supported by the fact that the council has passed a DA for that project, and also that the council has substantially commenced that project. So yes, we would continue to seek funds.
No, I'll let Councillor Jennings finish.
So essentially it's a pointless motion. That's pretty clear because it's effectively going to happen anyway. But I take Councillor North's point that what he's actually added into the amended motion is that the go-kart track is to be funded virtually 100% through grant funding, external sources, not ratepayers' money.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's the difference. We'll be pursuing the 100%, where in other cases, and I'll again go back to the collections facility, we attempted to get 100% funding, but when they offered 2.3 million for a 4.6 million job, we worked with the council and we did the mix. But what Councillor North is that I take is the direction to me as the general manager is that the project is on the books, but it is only to go ahead if it's grant funded, and that's always subject to council resolutions in the future.
Thank you, General Manager. Question?
Yes, Mr Mayor. If we get half of the 4.5 or 4.6 million dollars in grant funding, what is the situation then? Is it a project that can be staged, or does it all wait till all the funding is obtained? So I don't know whether this project can be staged. You can do half when you get half the money, so 2-point-something million, do that bit, and then wait till you get more, or if you've got to wait till you get the whole lot.
I'll get the General Manager to answer that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if we were able to obtain half the money by grant funding, firstly I'd probably come and have a discussion with the council, but certainly like all projects, we would look at how we could stage it to utilise those funds and then seek further money to finish the works.
Thank you, General Manager. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Orban?
Yeah, just a quick one. I guess following on from that, from Councillor Morse, I guess the 4.5 million that's stated for the go-kart track is the whole kit and caboodle. There's the key, go use it. Okay. To stage the track, I think is a pretty good plan, because I think you can do earthworks, then you can do track lay, and then you sort of, there's things that are in that DA that don't actually have to be built or put in there to let the track go ahead. So it's a $4.5 million, complete setup, but to actually stage the build, they could get it to a stage where it can be used without, it doesn't have to be right up to that 4.5 million.
Thank you. Councillor, question?
So just following on from that, what is the cost that it would require to make it operational? Do we have the minimum cost that we get away with for this project to be operational?
I'll get the Director of Engineering to answer that, but it may be that you do works under grants that can be staged, that you may not be directly operational after the first round of works. So there's that to be taken into account.
Through Mr Mayor, staging a project will certainly add a cost to the overall bottom line of a project, given you'll have a series of site establishments and so forth. Now, I don't have that number right in front of me as to what the dollar would be to have the track operational, but it would be very close to that, that $4.5 million, given that the majority of what's included in the development consent is essentially the track and the ancillary drainage and services and the like. There may be some opportunity to not have the full area of the, if you like, the pit area built in the format that it is, but that's a reasonably smaller part of the overall project. So the dollar amount that you'd be seeking would be very close to that money.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Councillor, would you like to finish it off, Councillor North?
Yep, thank you for discussion, councillors, and yeah, I certainly don't see it as a pointless motion, because I'll give two examples. That for years that there was people in this community trying to get bike facilities up and running, and it was only after this council threatened to bulldoze a BMX track that a person who then became a councillor, they put a business case to us, and we looked at it, and then 7 years later, basically we got a business park. I've seen other ones like the football that we tried at, soccer as I call it. We tried to get going for years. We got little bits done here and there, and it come to a point that we said, yeah, we want to do it, just not happening. So we're sort of sitting in the corner like the bike park did, and we got a business case together, and we started getting funding. We started making movement, and we got support from, I think, a couple of levels of government. And this was one that councillors that a number of us for a while have been reviewing and looking at and trying to get up and running. And it was certainly one that I wanted to have in mind's eye, not just in deliberation, and say, look, yeah, we haven't got the money, let's not worry about it. Let's make a clear case that we're looking to get the money. So, look, I won't argue the point, but, you know, to me it wasn't pointless. If it gets a discussion and we start getting some funding and get things going, I think it was Council Orban or someone showed me a document back in 2001 that was a picture of people which they were talking about on the paper today. A lot of those people, a number of those people were there before. So it's about putting it in the mind's eye of councillors. I saw other projects go by where one that didn't have a business case and nothing happened with another sport, and all of a sudden multi-million dollars in a facility was built. So I think we've got to have it in mindsight. We've been looking at it for a long time, and to give it the support and recognition that it is. And we will debate later on against Councillor Fry's notice of motion, but that's clearly what I was doing, and I didn't think it was pointless.
Thank you, Councillor North. I'll put the motion now. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to item number 7 now. The footpath on Bonner Street, Kelso. Moving second. Councillor Christian. Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 8, footpath on Marsden Lane and changes to Hereford Street. Please move it. Councillor Christian. Councillor North. Any discussion? Yes.
We've just had two there that, you know, we're talking about funding for footpaths and the likes. I just wondered through the director if I can ask, have we had where are we at with a review of our footpath plan, and are we still getting funding from Transport New South Wales for footpaths?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, the pedestrian access management plan is still being used by council, which is where the priorities of those particular footpaths come from. There will come a time where that will require a review, but certainly there's still a lot of work in that plan to finalise. We are still seeking, and we still receive funding from Transport for New South Wales for funding of footpaths. The most recent has been the footpath along the the Orange Highway, along the area leading up to the future subdivisions to provide the service in that area. So yes, we have received funding this year.
Okay, Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I recall that Councillor Christian raised an issue of a potential zebra crossing, of pedestrian crossing anyway, in Marsden Lane. Now, if you go up Marsden Lane at the time when the children are coming out of school, they're all walking on the road. It really isn't the ideal situation in any of these new subdivisions, particularly Marsden Lane, to have children, families, women with their strollers, getting the children from school, walking on the road. And I just think that I agree that we shouldn't amend it for this year, but I really would like it considered in the future, and consider footpaths in new subdivisions too, because really I was driving up Marsden Lane one day and I thought, heavens, this is not right. It really is not right with all the children on the footpath, on the road, and the women walking with the children. So I think we should look at that in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 9, Carrington Park. Centennial. Frightened you there, Councillor Moss, didn't I? I got it highlighted here too. You are awake. Centennial Park, item number 9. Councillor Morse, Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion?
I would like to, because in fact, when it says it's not amended, we have 250,000 in this year. 200 that will be carried over to next year for another 250,000, and the committee of the Friends of Centennial Park have asked me to say how much they appreciate the fact that next financial year there will be $500,000 to spend on water and trees for Centennial Park. Great, thank you.
Okay, hang on. Is there any more discussion, councillors? Councillor Christians?
Just again, that this was an issue that had been spoken about a long time in Bathurst, and I think everyone here in council should be really proud of themselves that we've actually pulled the trigger on this, and it's going to be a great space for the community to use. It does look like a bit of dog's breakfast at the moment, but I think with this particular funding, it's just going to look fantastic. So we really deserve a pat on the back for that one. That's great.
Yes, thank you, councillors. Councillor Orban? Just I thought you were shooing flies or doing something there. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 10, charges to the water and sewage services. I have a mover and a seconder. Mover to Councillor Morse, Councillor Christians. Any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 11, submissions from the Management Committee of Strata Plan 47355. Movement, Councillor Orban, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? Councillor Christians?
Just reading it here that the submission does not actually address any of the content in the delivery plan. Plus, there's defamatory rubbish littered throughout the report. I don't know why that's even in the report. Can someone explain that to me?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was put in as a submission, and therefore we treat it as a submission so that you are made aware of the concerns by the ratepayer concerned, but also to ensure that we comply with our legislative requirements, that we do consider all submissions. And the second item is to put an explanation in there why we haven't included the document as an attachment, which we normally do with all of them. But given the nature and the content of that, it's put through, and so it's compliance.
No more discussion on that, councillors. So then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. We'll go to item number 12, a submission from G.A. Crisp. I have a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Rudge, Councillor North. Is there any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 13, revenue policy. Mover and a second, Councillor Jennings, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? Councillor Jennings.
I just wanted to clarify, I guess, and work out the intentions. under this item, I believe the recently talked about position for an Aboriginal liaison officer is funded. Is that right? In the operational plan?
Sorry, just a councillor, we're still in the
13.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I've moved on.
Yeah, you moved a little bit quick. Are you still happy to move that? Yep. Okay. Is there any more discussion on this one? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Which one here now?
the delivery plan, the budget.
This one. Righto. Need a mover and a second for the delivery plan and operational plan. Moves Councillor Christians, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor North?
Well, just further to what Councillor Jennings was saying, that's what I wanted to double check. I've been told it's within the budget documents for the Aboriginal Liaison Officer, and I'm very happy with. Hopefully, the councillors all support it, and it's part of our ongoing future of this council, not for 1 year, but forever and a day. But I guess, Mr. GM, like your position, the GM's position there, I want to make sure that the Aboriginal Liaison Officer position is there forever and a day too, please.
Hey. You would like to answer that, Councillor? General Manager?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, yes, it's locked in as a permanent full-time employee.
There you go. Councillor Jennings.
I just wanted to clarify that it's very clear, as has been made through communication to us from the Director of Culture and Community Services, that this position would not be involved in the Second Circuit or go-kart track negotiations.
I'll get that answered for you.
That is correct.
Okay, and approximately the cost of the position, about $100,000, is that right?
The total budget allowed for is $120,000. That'll cover wages and also other associated costs that would be needed to allow the job to carry out. That might be some surveys. It may be funds to hold community meetings, those sorts of things. Yeah.
You finished, Councillor Jennings? Yes. Councillor Christians?
Yeah, just in regards to salary, what do we sort of base that on? I'm not really sure who to direct that at, maybe the Director of Corporate Finance, but yeah, is there like a structure to it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we do have a what we call a Wyatt system where every position goes through based on the skills and competencies required for that role, and it will then establish an appropriate remuneration level commensurate with the duties expected of that role.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this? Yes. Question?
With just what the answer that was given to Councillor Jennings, that one of the trains of thought always has been this position that we've worked long and hard to from dual naming Mount Panorama to making sure the flag is flown in the chambers and outside to make sure we acknowledge country, the Reconciliation Action Plan and various things this council's done, that I would hope as the individual that gets the job develops it sensitive matters, and even whether it is a go-kart track or a second race track or whatever it might be, an airport, that this position with their cultural knowledge and I can't as a white person, if I put it that way, speak on the Aboriginal people's behalf. I get a lot of advice all the time. So I would hope that person, that it develops, that it's an important position to staff, that we can make sure that we all always respect and do the right thing moving forward with this liaison officer, because the idea is the liaison officer to work within council, because I think it's an important thing to move forward, to make sure what we do moving forward. And the General Manager knows it's been on the books for about 3 or 4 years, but I would like to see a cultural centre developed, and without a doubt this person could be heavily involved, but I want to make sure this council always does the right thing and respects, the oldest culture in the world.
and those sorts of things will be involved. It was just that the question about the second circuit or the go-kart, given the situation of the development, the discussions, the positions and the researching. But in terms of the role, the three main key responsibilities are to deliver strategies, projects and capacity building programs, and this includes seeking grants, to assist the council to develop, implement and evaluate strategies and initiatives that address the needs of the whole Aboriginal community in Bathurst, and to facilitate awareness, understanding and positive relationships between council and the local Aboriginal community. So council, I think it picks up most of them. It's just those two projects, given the nature of them and where they are. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Morse.
Council supports and funds Arts Out West. One of the four main areas of work for Arts Out West is Aboriginal art, and I hope that this Aboriginal staff member can work with Arts Out West on the development of Aboriginal art and artists in Bathurst, and I look forward to them working with Arts Out West. So thank you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this position. Councillor Morse also. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 7, the revenue policy. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 8, rate levy, making the rate. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Yeah, Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 9, COVID-19 business and community stimulus measures. The Mayoral Minute on the 15th of April. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Rudge. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the... Yes, Councillor.
I've asked yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the General Manager, with the Bolam Group, with Mrs. Bolam, have we had a discussion with her yet? Well, she had a number of submissions, but I did speak to you about having a one-on-one discussion with her.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the director has had a discussion with her, but I've spoken to her early this week and we'll be meeting with her this week with some other, and with the Mayor as well. A number of the items she raises are already dealt with. The 0% rates and arrears, the flexible rate relief that was already in place, which we do with them individually. The council's rents, that's a matter that's dealt by the council individually. The annual food inspection fees she asked for, they've been waived. We didn't go at this stage small business grants. The extension to al fresco dining permits, a fair bit of that's been with respect to, we've removed a lot of those fees and charges, and then there was also from the last Mayoral Minute where it was raised about greater access to the footpaths, so that's been covered. The waiver of or discount on business registrations, well, we don't register businesses, that's a state government charge, but where we do have things like the fees in the Visitors Information Centre, we've waived those. That was about $48,000 a year. And then the Buy Local campaign, we've certainly escalated that. And tonight's Mayoral Minute put more into the not only the Buy Local but also the Doors Open campaign. The feedback, myself and the Mayor had a working party with a number of business owners a week ago. Feedback was quite positive, and we'll be meeting again this week with some more business owners, and after that we'll then probably organise another 2 of those.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Is there any more discussion? Is that what you'd like, Councillor Moss? All right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to Director Engineering Services report, water security update. Mover and a second, Councillor Jennings. Councillor North. Is there any discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just 3 relatively quick ones. I noticed on page 150 that we had proposed to get the Wimbendale Dam pipeline augmentation on the critical needs list, but has not occurred. It just sounds like we've been totally ignored. Is there any particular reason why, or we just haven't had a word back yet?
Through Mr Mayor, the original listing of the projects on the critical needs listing was for our stormwater harvesting project, not the Wimbledale pipeline augmentation. Part of the application requires an environmental assessment to be submitted, which we are actively working towards with our consultants, and the goal is to have that provided to the state government next month.
Okay, thanks very much. Also note on page 151, Council's second request for purchase of water from Oberon Dam has been denied. That, quite frankly, is just simply offensive, that water from this catchment should be heading over into Sydney. Just a comment. But it's clear that we're, not in the mix. We're not considered important when it comes to, providing the food supply for the city. And the third question I've got is the bores that have been completed. You're saying at the time of writing, 2 bores have gone down, but will be investigated. What's the tentative results of these bores?
Through Mr Mayor, we are yet to receive the water quality reports and yield reports for those bores. There's 8 in total to be done, and they'll be completed shortly. And then there'll be water testing in terms of quality and quantity, which we're awaiting those reports imminently.
Yes. Questions, Councillor Morse?
In this comment from the Greater Sydney Water, whatever, it says the importance of Fish River Scheme to parts of the Greater Sydney's water supply system. Doesn't it just go into a big dam and go everywhere, or does it go to one suburb?
Through Mr Mayor, part of the water out of Oberon Dam services Upper Sydney as far east as Katoomba. So Mount Victoria, Katoomba, part of those areas is serviced by water out of Oberon Dam.
Not Sydney City? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor North?
Yeah, Councillor Jennings spoke a couple of them, and there was another one that starts on page 150 and 151 about the environmental
Attention, councillors.
Sorry?
No, you're right.
About the environmental flows, and we again got another. This matter is yet to be finalised. So 3 matters still not finalised. Now, I don't mean to be cheeky here, but I just saw today that they fast-tracked the fish markets in Sydney. I guess fish come out of the sea, that's a bit of water. They're happy to do that in Sydney. Fast-track something down there. And I hate asking this question again, but do we know the final detail of how we're going to fast-track our projects? Have we seen the final detail yet? I'm really feeling like an old record just keeps going around. I know I am old, but have we got the final detail yet?
Through Mr Mayor, we are making efforts in terms of meeting the state government requirements for their extra data that they're required. It's been extensive work, which we're coming towards the end of it. As you've seen in the report, there's been extensive work done to date, and we're expecting that a lot of that work will be wrapped up next month in an effort to receive approval for those projects.
Yeah, with great respect to the Director of Engineering, you're doing a wonderful job and the staff, and so is all our council staff on this. I am extremely and bitterly disappointed that we as a council keep finding solutions, and we as a council that seems to be, look, it's going to happen, and it must be frustrating for you as a director that's leading this, and I would be pulling my hair out that, yep, we're hopefully next month, and again, with respect, you've told us that before, and we keep seeing, and this bar keeps changing. I just wish they'd look over the Blue Mountains and have a look at this region and everything it offers, and we're a gateway to the Central West and a very important part of New South Wales and Australia, that we have worked our butt off. I think better than probably, and I'm maybe parochial, the fact this council's worked its butt off. The Mayor the other day said we need to get our butt off the seat with another matter. Well, we've got our butt off so high off the damn ground on this one that the state government, it is tough circumstances. I give it to them. It is probably the worst period of time that any government has gone through at any level, from the bushfires and the drought There's so much that this government has gone through, but we have done the work. When do we stop having to do the work and have some damn bureaucrat, because I'm sick of it, it's the bureaucrats that keep throwing at you as our staff, this, we need that. I would like an estimated cost of the amount of time spent and what that cost has put to council in time, because we talk about, we let someone, have free hire at the Mount or something and it's worth, I'll just grab a figure, 5,000. What is the time and effort that these men and women have put into this when they could have been working on other projects that we seem to hit the mark and we're not at the mark? It is extremely frustrating. I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor, the General Manager and the Director, do you want us to start, you see these pictures of everyone getting together and collectively and saying, we want help. We have done everything in our power for this to happen, and we do not seem to be supported. And, as I said, cheekily said it, but the words were on the news report tonight before I came, fast track to fish markets. Where's our fast track in? And if you don't have water, you don't have life. I'm sorry, I'm disappointed.
You want to answer that? Or you want an answer? Just a comment, okay. Any other? Councillor Christian.
Yeah, look, only just to say that it is bitterly disappointing. All us 9 councillors, unfortunately, including yourself, Mr. Mayor, toothless tigers. We get up here and somewhat embarrass ourselves once a month when these reports come in front of us, and we need to get tough on the state government, and we need this and need that. Well, our opinions and our comments obviously mean dirt, which is tremendously disappointing. You think the leaders of a community would be heard. We would be the most, probably, arguably, most important voices in a community in regards to an issue that concerns water. And our forecast was very, very dire, particularly at one point. And to advertise a critical needs list, we're going to cut through the red tape. We're going to make it happen. Fast track projects, it's going to be excellent. Are we almost 12 months later? The whole thing is an absolute embarrassment. I feel tremendously sorry for staff. It seems to be always a day away. They ask you for an apple pie, you give them an apple pie. But you know what? Try a meat pie. You come back, you make the pie, you give it back. Yeah, I feel like a sausage roll. It's an absolute disgrace, and we're simply ignored. On such a serious issue, we're simply ignored. And I don't know, Deputy Mayor, why waste your breath? We're screaming into the abyss, and it's all for, everyone can see. Everyone can see what's going on. In regards to being knocked back again for requests from water from the Oberon Dam, COVID-19, that's the big thing at the moment. We're all terrified, we're afraid to leave our homes, the whole show. We're all in this together. You got Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong in New South Wales, the hardest hit. They're the big cities, but you know what? Everybody in the state, we're all in this together. We're one, solidarity. Yet when we go through a drought, a statewide drought, and need some water and some assistance from our big brother in Sydney, well, no, you can get stuffed. We're not interested. Solidarity ends there. Oh, but when it affects the big end of town, everybody needs to do their bit. But when little Bathurst asks for some help, Big Brother gives us a middle finger. And I can't believe I've only been on council such a short time, but this is just defeating. I'm tired reading these reports. I don't know what more to say, but we need to save our breath, I think.
Councillor Jennings. Any more discussion? Councillor Fry.
I'd like to disagree slightly with Councillor Christian that since the whole water crisis started, well, it's been going for quite a while, but I've attended water conferences with the Director in Albury. I've been to Sydney with the UNSW water conferences, and at those conferences there's the Water Minister, the Premier, the Director, the Cross-Border Commissioner. Now these situations give us a chance to unofficially lobby those people over morning tea. I know it's not much, but it is work we are doing behind the scenes, and it's lobbying, I guess. But you know, we put in phone calls, emails, and me as a casual observer, I guess, I'm not directly involved. But yeah, I really do think we are really pushing for Bathurst through the back channels as well. So I think, yeah, there is a lot of stuff happening that you may not be aware of, Council, but yeah, we are taking it very seriously, and I'm continuing to.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Is there any other discussion, Councillor Orban?
Thanks, mate. Just before you finish up, yeah, look, that's all very nice, but nothing's happened. You know, I have to agree with you, Councillor Christian. It's my head's getting very sore from beating it against that wall, and our director's hair is getting less and less, I can see. So even though he's trying to grow it, it's a really, really bad situation that we've been placed in, and it has been 6 months since since they brought in the legislation, and we're still not there. So what do we have to do? Can someone tell us? Because yeah, meetings over morning teas are all very nice, but where's it getting us? Honestly.
Okay, before we go there, I'm also losing my hair, but the General Manager will tell you why.
Yeah, mine was all cut last night, so I'm feeling very good. Look, there are some frustrations there, but one of the things I got the director was to put those tables behind in the report to show you what had been done. And can I just say, when you go through it, there are a lot of the steps in the process that are required that have been completed, because there's been a lot of stuff in the background. Legal advice has had to be obtained. We certainly, as Councillor Fry said, taking a lot of opportunities. I can tell you the local member is really out there actively lobbying for us. I regularly talk to him about it, and there is a lot of discussions going on. It is a complicated situation, having the drought, having the bushfires, and having COVID-19. It's creating a lot of issues. But in saying that, there is a lot of process. I mean, we've got the Wimbendale Dam water, albeit we want the second pipeline, but we've now got that available at 3 meg a day. That's 30% of our water requirements that are needed. We're well into the designs on a number of the routes. We're well into getting a number of the applications, doing various European cultural assessments, Aboriginal assessments. There has been some frustration with the paperwork, but we continue to work with the government departments to get things through. I think it's right to be frustrated, but I don't think you should feel completely that things aren't being achieved, and that's why that's there, just to see. And I suppose I'm just trying to say there are positives, and we are progressing along in as many areas as we can. It is, you're quite right, correctly costing us money, but a fair bit of that money is state government grants. So the government has done the right thing there. We've got the initial 2 million, we've got the initial 10 million. We're still discussing for the other 10 million. Plus we've got the $2.25 million for the Wimbendale Dam wall. So there are positive things there as well. And so, yes, let's push for it, but don't lose sight of what we're achieving.
Question, Councillor North.
Yeah, two questions. With the second refusal of the water from Oberon, we identified it originally as water that wasn't being used. It was an allocation that hadn't been taken up by whatever electricity company was. So is that water being used, or again, is it just being denied?
Through Mr Mayor, your original point was correct. It was water that we wish to purchase out of an existing allocation, and we have at this stage again been denied access to the purchase of that allocation. It's not as though the water's not there.
Okay, you'd like to finish off, Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I just wanted to express my frustration, I guess, in that I don't agree that with Councillor North's assertion that blaming the bureaucrats is what this is about. If the relevant minister, Pavey, wanted to put us on that list, or any other minister who's got to make a joint decision, if they really wanted to do it, if they felt the political pressure, they could do it tomorrow. They have it done by the morning. We missed the boat when nearly $1 billion was being handed out to Tamworth and further west. and other areas. We missed the boat. We did not apply any serious political pressure. We did not marshal our troops together here in this background. We didn't have a united voice of the businesses who are going to be affected, the big businesses, the big manufacturing. We did not have the farmers. We did not have the irrigators. We did not have a whole range of water users all marching down to Sydney and saying, hey, we're in this too, and we've got a serious problem. I was at one meeting where the mayors of Tamworth and further west and in between, Dubbo, etc., were all there. And they were talking to Minister Pavey like they were all part of the same family. We weren't there. We weren't there. No presence at all except me as a councillor. You know, so we have missed the boat. That's why we've been treated like second-class citizens. And now the world has moved on. Can't expect COVID-19 to just be, you know, scrubbed aside so that we can get our water sorted out now, because the pressure is easing. So we missed the boat. It's as simple as that. And if they wanted to sign it, if they wanted to put us on those lists, if they wanted to help us, they could do it with the right amount of political pressure. And it doesn't say a great deal if the local state member is putting heaps of lobbying in effort for us. Well, why aren't we getting a result? And I take General Manager's point that we're making progress, but it's slowly, and it's at our expense, and all the risk is with us. And had we had a slightly worse prospect for winter, I'd be seriously concerned about where we'd be heading.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Now I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to the Director of Culture and Community Services report. Item number 1. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christians, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, from the Director of Culture and Community Services. What effect has had on the stopping of the childcare allowance that's just been announced?
We haven't finalised the financial impact of the impact of COVID-19 on children's services, but it's been positive in terms of growth of families using our services.
Probably could I add further to your comment, the removal of the federal government subsidy, which I think is what you were raising, we had no benefit from that because we weren't eligible for JobKeeper and we weren't allowed to charge our normal fees. So the removal of the federal government subsidy or position will probably financially improve our position.
Any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 2, Bathurst Region A Cultural Vision 2036 report. Could I please have a move and a second? Councillor Orban, Councillor Rudge. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 3, the Destination Brand quarterly report. Please have Councillor Jennings, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 10, reports of other committees. Traffic Committee report, 2nd of June 2020. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? There's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. We deal with item number 11 now, notice of motion. Notice of motion from Councillor Fry. Could I please have a mover? Or Councillor Fry. Is there a seconder to this? Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm moving this motion tonight because I believe that the current site for the go-kart track is the second best site, and we'd have a far better result if we actually move it down the hill a bit to a site which doesn't have the same baggage, if you like, as the current proposed site. I'm seeking the councillors to support the relocation of the go-kart track to a more suitable site and I'm trying to recommend a site 1 kilometre to the west, subject to the usual investigations. A broad range of community people have asked me to represent their views here tonight on this issue, and I'm getting emails all day yesterday of supporting the motion to move it, and they're a very wide range of people who currently use the top of Mount Panorama for a pretty wide range of uses. As I've said before, I'm not opposed to the go-kart track in the correct location, and I'd say that my family's been a proud supporter of motor racing, and we've helped develop motor racing for over 100 years in Bathurst. And I understand that go-kart racing does help with driver skills and with young drivers, and it could potentially save lives on the road. Look, I sympathise with the track, the go-kart track club. They could be going on for 20 years. So I'm saying another few months, 6 months or a year, I don't think it's going to matter. So I'm not here to hold it up. When we engaged Apex Track Designs to design us a track, they were seen as probably some of the best track designers in the world. And they recommended the go-kart track be located within the motorsport complex, where all motorsports and the whole range, not just go-karts and cars, but all sorts of things could be happily co-located. So they recommended, as per international best practice, that the go-kart track be co-located with a motorsport complex for the obvious reasons of sharing facilities, track maintenance, construction costs, and that sort of thing. And look, I don't really know where our current motorsport complex is at. It may or may not be happening in the short term, or who knows. So I think that's up in the air, but it does not affect my concept of putting the go-kart track on part of that land, which wouldn't affect any future development of the motorsport complex. So the current DA identifies the major part of McPhilly Park, and you have those diagrams in front of you. I refer to the one with the go-kart track and the parking, loading and paddock areas. So that adds up to something like 3 hectares plus the go-kart track. So the go-kart club is asking for access, probably exclusive access, to around about 3 hectares of McPhilly Park, which is a public park. It was gifted to the people of Bathurst as a public park, not for the single use of one club. And that would, I imagine, be spectator parking, support vehicles, utes, trucks, people tuning up their carts and that sort of thing. So they do need 3 hectares of that space. That space would be subject to WHS provisions in terms of risk to the public. So they would have to have,
yeah, you're at the extended time.
They would have to have fencing around that. Walter McPhillamy gifted it for passive recreation, and I don't think you would see that as a compatible activity. I'd stress that the management would stay the same. I don't think it would disadvantage the track go-kart club people. I've had verbal conversations with lots of people, racing drivers, and all sorts of people who said, "Yep, it's a good move to put it down with the other track." I've contacted Paul Toole. He said he doesn't. Well, I'm inferring that he doesn't care where it goes. He's not. He said it's up to us, the council, where we relocate it. So he's not supporting either site. I have asked him, has he allocated any money to the track, or possibly in the future? He's not that forthcoming on that. So I think in summary.
Continue, Councillor Fry.
Okay, thank you. The current track, current site has cultural implications for the Reggie Elders group and significant grassy box woodland. So I don't want to see that destroyed. I don't want to see those values destroyed, and I'd rather see it go down the bottom to a more suitable site for everyone. And it would reduce the division in the committee, which I believe will be ongoing if we put a track up there. And I don't want to see the committee divided and antagonistic towards each other. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there any other discussion? Councillor Morse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a very important discussion to have tonight, and I hope that Council will bear with me while I talk about it. Now, we all agree that Mount Panorama is one of Bathurst's icons. You know, if you talk about Mount Panorama and you go onto Google, it's all about a racetrack. You have maps of the racetrack, you have the cars, you have the winners, you have the records. But the only results are about racing. But the racetrack is actually only a very small part of the mountain. The whole of Mount Panorama includes the former Sir Joseph Banks Native Reserve, which is now and was the result of a land, the Aboriginal Lands Council had a land claim on that. Council lost that battle in 2001, and it is now owned by the Aboriginal Lands Council, whose board members are scattered from various organisations throughout New South Wales and not necessarily Bathurst focused, which yet I'm being very narrow-minded here, but Mount Panorama is Bathurst. We have camping grounds, we have lookouts, and we have picnic shelters, although one of the picnic shelters has now been fenced off, and that was the site where we went to see many eclipses and comets. Now, 5 times a year, the racing track is used for motor racing, but for the rest of the year, the mountain is used by the community and by tourists. And I'm talking about the wider part than the track. The track is actually a very popular running track, walking track for lots of people. There's always cars and people park down the bottom and they walk around. The top of the mountain is lovely. And if you haven't been up there, then just to go up there, it's windy, but it's lovely. We walk our dogs, we take picnics, and especially with COVID, we've enjoyed the views. It's a very special place. It's not just an Aboriginal place, it's not any place, it's a special place. It's at the very centre and the very heart of Bathurst, and we have to remember that. It's the mountain. Now, back in 2015, I was one of the councillors that inspected the plans for a simple go-kart track, similar to a couple of the other facilities around the mountain, one of which is we have a tip. We have a waste management plan, a plant on Mount Panorama. So it was a small community-run go-kart track and costing, I've been reliably informed, $850,000. And it was going to be further down the back and not be that intrusive. Now we're looking at a $4.5 million development with large buildings, a 1,000-metre circuit and 7 days a week operations. And from my experience with go-karts, they are particularly noisy. They're like 10 motor mowers all going at once, which is being a bit biased, but they are very noisy. Now this makes it an either-or situation. Either we give the whole of the top of Mount Panorama, and we've got the maps here to show it, McPhillamy Park, we give the whole of the top of Mount Panorama to a small group of go-kart enthusiasts at a cost of $4.5 million of taxpayers' money, or we keep it as an open space parkland for the use of the whole community. Now, I take the dogs up there for quite frequently, and I go round past these big water tanks, and we won't be able to walk there anymore because they'll be fenced off as part of the go-kart track. So let's just do a bit of imagining. Think how good it would be if the top of Mount Panorama was a park. We had trees, we have views, we have places to run around or to sit. On the other hand, we have the noise, the smell, the cars and the trucks taking up nearly the whole of McPhillamy Park, day and night. I have been advised that in fact they will go round and round at night too. So it's not really a question of whether we have a go-kart track or not. I'm not against a go-kart track any more than I'm against motor racing or bike racing or horse racing, but it's where it's located. That is the whole crux of this matter. There's also a question, and we must face up to it, and we have as a council faced up to it quite boldly. There's a question of the cultural significance of Mount Panorama. Back in 1938 and much later, no consideration was given to the Aboriginal cultural history of the whole area. Even though Percy Gresser, who was well known in that field, he was a Bathurst shearer.
Can you just hurry up there, Councillor Moore? I've gave you an extension already.
I've only got a little bit.
Okay.
But I think it's important that we hear this, because Percy Gresser has recorded and donated to Sydney University 6,000 Aboriginal stone axes and spearheads, and we're now saying we don't have any. He probably collected them all. But we must remember that now things have changed. Not only have they changed in the last 10 years, but they've changed in the last month. I have had emails from people who've been talking about the destruction of the rock caves in Western Australia by Rio Tinto. So is that what we're doing? We're going to say, what the hell, we'll just build a go-kart track. We don't care about what happens to cultural significance of black people and white people. Black Lives Matter is a big movement at the moment, and we're in the thick of it. So the emails have been coming in saying, are we also joining with the people who say, let's cover over Aboriginal cultural significance? And I do not want to be part of a council to dismiss the concerns of Aboriginal people. And it's certainly not the time to be spending $4.5 million to fund a community sporting group.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Orban.
Thanks. What a load of rubbish. Sorry, but we passed this DA back in December 2018. Should be done and dusted. I mean, you know, what's this council doing? We pass things, we give it the go-ahead, and then all of a sudden we've got notices of motion coming in. Oh, no, I don't want to put that there. We'll put it down there instead. Okay. Have we thought about the extra cost, or number one, the cost we've already gone through, the money we've spent already to get this track put up on top of the hill, up in McPhilmy Park? We are not taking up all of McPhilmy Park, for God's sake. Have a look at the fence lines. Yeah, dead set. Where it's been a house block fenced off over the back there for umpteen years. You say you go walking your dogs and that sort of thing, people go up there for picnics. Well, they haven't been up there. And that's where 50% of this track is. But let's go back to the cost. We've done all the studies. Okay, you mentioned Rio Tinto. Come on, where's the caves? Where's all the Aboriginal artefacts? We haven't got any up there. It's been proven. Bathurst has done the most Aboriginal heritage study of anybody anywhere in this whole region, probably in New South Wales, maybe Australia, I don't know, but we have done plenty and it's come up empty-handed. Okay, so we've paid all this money, so what are we going to do? Oh, sorry people, we're going to move it now. We don't want to put it there. Okay, but we will put it down there where we've got to now find the money again for a DA. Got to now do all the money again to plan the track, design the track. We've got about a $3 million spend if you want to drive a road into this place where you've got it in the middle of nowhere. We've got, and you, Councillor Fry, should know this one, the conservation biosecurity laws that will come into play when the DA is lodged to build a new track down here. Add another few $1 million onto the top. You know, you don't talk sense. Look at it. We've got a DA fully approved, substantially commenced, and, you know, for what? For someone to say, no, we don't want to do that anymore. Well, you say that the emails are coming in, you know, you've got all these emails. We've got 253 people here that have said, go for it, you know, go for it. And they're not club members, not go-kart members. I just don't understand why people can't abide by the umpire's decision and just let it go. You know, do what we put through and let's build this track where we're going to build it. Up at the back of McPhilmy Park. Okay. Councillor Fry, you just said something really important, and I've got pictures here to prove the go-kart track, same members, Mick Johnson, Pete Dawson, Steve Miller's not there anymore. November the 23rd, 2001, in front of your newspaper, Western Advocate. Council gives the green light for a go-kart track. Still hasn't happened. Okay, Councillor Fry says, what's another 6 months or a year? If you're going to put it down the second circuit, another 6 months or a year, do you really believe you can do that in 6 months or a year? Because if you can, I'd say you'll have a track to build, because there is no way known that you will get it down there in that amount of time. This one is ready to go. We've got it in the budget to go for grants, to pay for this track, and let's do that. I mean, it's just beggars belief. It's the other reason the track can't go down in that area. You look at a track in similar position at Sydney Motorsport Park. There's a go-kart track there, and it's a very nice track. It's run by the same people that run the Sydney Motorsport Park. Sydney Kart Club, that's their home. They now cannot afford to race at that track because of what they're asking for use of that facility. The corporation that runs that whole park. A club cannot afford to run there. It's going to be the same here. We will have to have management in to run something like this. They will see a go-kart track as a bit of a cash cow as well.
I'll say the same to you, Councillor Orban. You need to tidy it up.
That's fine. So, you know, it's one of those things that we have already put through a DA that has been substantially commenced. Why in God's earth would we look at turning around now and saying, no, we're not going to put it there, we're going to go down here? No, we are going to put it up there. That's what we first intended to do. The majority of people are fine with it going up there. As we say, minorities are very loud, and that's what's happening. So, and again, for the Second Circuit, the original brief for Apex design did not include a go-kart track. They just threw that in because they found a bit of land down there, but it's for driver training and that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of things there that I can still go on with. I know the bells are running. But, yeah, look, it's, and Councillor Morse, one other thing, I don't think the original quote was ever $850,000 for a 900-metre track. And you were the one that was said to them, go for it to get the international track up and running to that extra 90 metres of track. And there you go. I'll finish at that before I get.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Is there any more? Councillor Christians?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here this evening is two parties, one that are operating on evidence and the other party that's operating on emotion. Roughly 2 years ago, not quite, all us councillors were given a brief in regards to the Aboriginal Heritage Study that was done on top of Mount Panorama. Very extensive, covered everything. As a result of that brief, we learnt that there were in fact no tangible artefacts in that area. Now, we did our due diligence. We have respected the Aboriginal community's concerns by doing these studies. If they had have turned out that this in fact was a really significant area, this particular parcel I'm talking about was a really significant area, we wouldn't be having this chat because we just simply would not have gone ahead with it. But instead, the results stated, the umpire's decision stated that we could go along with this project without any issue. We talk about the costing, and Councillor Morse is concerned about the cost of a go-kart track. I'll tell you what, it'll be a hell of a lot more beneficial to the community's economy than the collection facility that we spent around $2 million or whatever on. I can assure you of that. Now, ratepayers are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and to basically tear up that report, I think, is an incredible insult to the ratepayers of Bathurst. Now, it is important to note, and this cannot be lost on the media, on us, on the community. The local Aboriginal Lands Council have done their own investigations, and they are comfortable with this site. Now, Councillor Morse used them as an example in regards to another parcel of land which they disputed, and successfully got up in court, and now they're in control of that land. So I don't see why this would be any different. Yet the local Aboriginal Land Council have given their full support to a go-kart track. So whose concerns are we listening to? We can only take things at face value, and we have to respect the process. Now, it's not really a stalling tactic because, like Councillor Orban correctly points out, we haven't actually moved on with this project. Now, the reason why I ran for council is that it seemed like there's a lot of things that have been talked about for the last 20 years, and these particular projects were not getting done, and that's why I put my hand up. So I think we have to get on with it. It's 2001. And incidentally, I'm not sure whether there was much outcry either back then. But anyway, a long story short, I also want to point in the fact that I hope this isn't a political move by a political party in local council. I hope this isn't a Greens infestation of a local issue. I understand David Shoebridge was milling around and sort of putting his nose into our business. So I sincerely hope that a large political party isn't involved in trying to stall or create issues, particularly in the current climate, because that would be grossly inappropriate. We have to get on with it. We've read our brief. That's just the bottom line. I can't believe we're here talking about this tonight.
Okay, is there any more discussions from councillors? Councillor Jennings?
Can I just ask a question to start? How legally binding is this motion to an existing DA if it was approved?
The existing DA would still stand, and could be actioned in the future by decision of council. Probably the biggest issue I have with the motion, and it's not a question of whether I believe where the go-kart goes, the issue I have is that it says specifically be relocated approximately 1 kilometre west. Yes, we've checked, it's council. The indication doesn't tell us exactly where. Yes, it is operational land and we do own the land. Without knowing the full details of the site, don't know whether existing HR covers that area, what the implications are for water, sewer and power and the dollars that come through. Potentially it conflicts with the master plan for the hotel for the Second Circuit. Potentially it actually conflicts with the Second Circuit design in its own right. We don't know, given that I haven't got the site, but for it to be said 1 kilometre west, I don't know the impact on the Transgrid easement. Also, we would then have to go and work out road access ways. We need a secondary route. I believe we probably can handle that through a right-of-way through to Hen and Chicken Lane. There are biodiversity issues, and so we'd have to at least update that to see where that fitted in with our current biodiversity. A new DA would actually completely enact the Biodiversity Act, which is not enacted by the current DA, which would generate costs. We'd have to work out what that is. We'd need to do an acoustic assessment. I don't believe that that would be an issue. If the go-kart is okay where it is proposed now, then the indication from where Councillor Fry, I think the acoustics would probably be better. You would need a brand new DA because it is substantially not the same as the existing one. And given that it's in an area where we didn't do sampling pits, we'd probably have to do sampling pits and extend the HR.
There you go.
That's a bit more than the question I asked.
Yeah.
But,
no, you're right. Continue.
Sorry, Council. I just thought because it's saying that it is to be relocated, what you're debating is what would be preferable is that the debate is that council undertake a review of other site options at Mount Panorama for the location of a go-kart track, including a site approximately 1 kilometre west of the currently approved site.
No, you finish. You keep going.
Yeah, so I appreciate the first part of the answered the question I asked, which was that the existing DA is not legally bound if this motion was to get up. So there's probably, it sounds like, from the go-karts point of view, a bit of a legal safety net in there, even if this is approved. But all those other issues, if this was approved and say it was unanimous and everybody wanted it moved and all the go-kart club were happy to move it, it would open the door to obviously all those things that the general manager has just outlined, and it's important that we have that in the debate. But well, in fact, I believe that this issue has a rather sad history because the current site is so contested and conflicted. Basically, because relations with the local elders has failed dismally since former Mayor Gary Rush resigned. Credit is due to Councillor Morse. When she was Mayor, she got the ball rolling on better relations with the Aboriginal community. I remember the meeting and the stories, etc., that happened at the time. But straight after Councillor Morse, Gary Rush was as a mayor, was proactive and supportive and personally delivered a strong relationship between council and the elders. There were lots of joint meetings, positive shared media, regular representation, and above all, a good, trusting dialogue that created the opportunity to find workable solutions, particularly on the Mount. But because this relationship has sunk like a stone since Gary Rush resigned, this once strong working relationship with the elders has fallen apart at the most important level. Instead, it has unfortunately been left to the General Manager to pick up the pieces behind the scenes. And I commend the General Manager for doing so because a lesser person might not have bothered. Supporters of the Kart Club, including in this chamber, probably thought that killing off the mayoral relationship with the elders would help their cause. But the fact it has done the exact opposite. Killing off the mayoral relationship with the elders also killed off any hope of finding a workable solution or any kind of alternative, like focusing on how this council will recognise the bicentenary of the Declaration of Martial Law back in 1824. It's also clear that the newly minted, as previously approved, Aboriginal Liaison Officer position cannot solve this relationship problem because, as we know, the Director said, this position would not be involved in the Second Circuit or go-kart track negotiations. In other words, this position is not going to do the Mayor's job for him. There's no evidence the current conflict with the elders is about to stop anytime soon, even if the track gets built on the Mount. And that's probably especially true with some of the things that are going on in the world lately. But putting this brief summary history aside, overall, I think we have lost sight of what Mount Panorama, dual named as Walu, actually is. Mount Panorama is an iconic, world-recognised public asset for all the people of Bathurst to benefit from. These days, Mount Panorama is absolutely high-end real estate. It is top-notch public land overlooking our city and region. It's kind of like our royal balcony overlooking the Bathurst Plains for the full 360 degrees. It's quite a view. How many of us take visitors up there? How many locals take visitors up there with more than a hint of pride referring to the motorsport history there, even if we're not motorsport fans? There's no doubt it's a brilliant public asset that should be there for everyone to use, but it has become beholden to two relatively small groups, neither of which have proven a right to claim permanent, exclusive access at the expense of the silent majority. And in between these two extremes, there are 40,000 Bathurst residents and ratepayers who I think are the ones who deserve to have the biggest say. So to give Bathurst a proper say, I propose that this council commissions an independent, statistically valid survey that is targeted to accurately capture the entire Bathurst population. As a council, we've used random sampling surveys before, and it's worked quite well. And in this case, it must be done with a decent sample size to capture the full population. most likely a telephone style survey like they do for all the serious polls, and with a sample size of around about 500 responses would do it. This will gauge community sentiment beyond the opinions of this chamber and the potentially 250 people who back the Kart Club and probably the other 250 people who are against it.
No, continue, just hurry up.
This will gauge community sentiment without the skewed bias of the two conflicted parties. And if the survey result says the majority of the Bathurst community wants a go-kart track on their public asset, then fine, go ahead. Overall, I agree with the state MP, Mr. Toole, that it's not critical which site is ultimately used for the go-kart track, but to solve this once and for all, a relatively inexpensive survey of the Bathurst community will give the Kart Club the social licence it needs to proceed on the current side, if indeed Bathurst actually wants it. I'd be happy to add this request to the motion as a precondition for moving the track or not, as the case may be, and I would add a note there that we have around about $12,000 in surplus, which would be enough to do a decent survey about 3 times over.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Councillor Hanger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I just want to know, is the land up there shovel ready? Are we sort of nearly ready to go? Where are we up to with that, please?
It's more than shovel ready. We've already commenced the project. We've demolished the house up there. It's basically money. It's the only thing. The design has been completed. The design's been approved by the appropriate karting association. So really it's just waiting on money.
Thank you. Just another, how much has it cost so far for the design and for other activities that have happened up there, please?
Through Mr. Mayor, we've spent around $164,000 so far.
Does that include the HR?
Yes, that includes the HR costs.
And could I ask also, Councillor Fry mentioned grassy box woodland. Could I have somebody please tell me, is that rare? Or are there lots of grassy box woodlands around? I'm not sure.
I might leave that to the Director of Environmental Services. He probably has a better idea than I have on that.
Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Grassy box woodland is a threatened ecosystem.
Okay, any other Councillor North?
Just in that last point quickly, I remember when Kath Knowles was here, and then when later on, when the 24 fire station, they talked about there's an avenue, a pathway of that woodland that does come down from the mount, because I think there was some around the fire station, I remember. What's interesting and I think great about this debate is we're all elected to voice our opinions, whether we agree with each other or not. It's good that people have the conviction to state. It was mentioned about Percy Gresser, and I've got some information out on Percy Gresser there, and I'll just read a couple of things here. You know, when he located Aboriginal campsites, and a number of them would be worth thorough and scientific investigation. And he said, my procedure was, when going to a place for the first time, if it did not happen to have situated near the bank of a river or a creek or another natural water supply, to inquire from the owner of a place, people in the area, where a near water supply would be. And he goes on to talk about the Aboriginal people did move on, and they were in different areas, and you would find artefacts, as he said. There was probably about 12, 14 pages I read, and it was very interesting how he went about it. And he said times I picked up as much as I could. How much could I carry in a swag and moving around? And he spoke about Queensland. He spoke about Bathurst. He spoke about the Darling area. And, you know, everything that I've looked at and found, he's collected from all over the place, which I think is absolutely wonderful. Artefacts that maybe could have been, and they say, are collected in the Bathurst area. But a lot of what I read in here, it talks about waterways. It talks about sources of food and talks about water. And everything we've done, and I'll say, councillors, we all got this report, and I hope you've read, and I've run a bunch of times to Extend Heritage. And we've got a new one about the second go-kart track. And I've heard what the elders have had to say. But you know what? I've talked to elders out of Bathurst, but at Wiradjuri. I've spoken to elders that are female. I've spoken to uncles, not just this group, other groups. Because I think to do my homework, I need to talk to everyone. Because one thing is we know in this chamber, we have all different opinions. That's what makes our society, our democracy great. We can voice our opinions. But I've done a lot of homework. And we talk about Windradine, and it talked about the early days. There was documents I located, talked about the early days and when the white people, and we're talking about the first settlements here, and they talked about it in such a way that we had great connections and the people were friendly and they were scared of us. Conflicts occurred. Conflicts have occurred all through nature. And is any person in society happy about some of the conflicts that have occurred within their nature, in their nations? They're not. You know, we look at history, we've got to learn from history. And one thing about this whole process, I've known a lot of Aboriginal people through my life, and I've asked them for advice because I'm not an Aboriginal person. I've asked for advice and they've given me advice. And women have given me advice and have told me it is not a secret women's area. But they've also told me that an area it would be of some significance. You think of it back in the day, that the men were probably up there, they would camp up there, looking over the plains of Bathurst, they would be seeing the kangaroos and everything, the food. But they all, in a lot of things I found, they talk about the waterways and the need for water and the need for food and different types of food. And I can see Mount Panorama, Walu, Mount Canobolas, and all these high peaks in this area of being significance. But the Wiradjuri that even stretch right down to Victoria, they were a nation, the largest nation of Aboriginal people that I understand in Australia. They did move a lot. And a lot of the stuff I've read, it talks about we would move on and things would be left, axe heads and all this sort of stuff, and stones used, and sometimes things that you didn't think were perfect, but over time it was able to carve the bark off a tree and all that. But councillors, we've been given all these reports. We've approved 3 DAs, and I've spoken to a lot of different Aboriginal people, and they've given me advice. And what I've done is use my two ears to listen and one mouth to sprout it. Is I'm listening to them and getting advice. When we have reports and it says it hasn't been found, and we as councillors can't talk to the public what's in this report, we're not allowed. And the new report we got the other day was given to us. We all asked questions about it. What is the point of having rules of the day to follow if we're not going to follow them? If the laws of the land say we need to do this and we need to do these studies, this council's done those studies. Yes, some things were found. Stuff in that report, and I wished I could say it, but I know I can't. But the things were found, they're going to look after them. That it is not a game breaker, I think was the words used by council staff. Why commission these reports if we're going to dismiss them? Why get elected into this council if you're not prepared to stand up and make decisions and stand by your decisions? I listen to a lot of people, and people have rung me and contacted me. And I've listened to what the elders group have said, and it was said earlier about Sir Joseph Bank Reserve. And it was the Aboriginal Lands Council, if I've got it correctly, that put in that claim on that. That same group have not said that there is an issue up there, but they have also said that you think about it back in the time, there would be significance. And I've been told, and I'll stand corrected, but I've been told that secret men's business and women's business is nowhere near each other. But early on in the debate, we were getting told many years ago a men's site, and then it changed to the women's site. You know what? Everyone has a right to opinion and their interpretation. But we have a job here to make a decision. That is not all the stuff I've got at home. Like, my wife gets annoyed with me how much I keep and go through, I'll bring it out at times and read it. Because that's how I do my job. And I'll listen to what the people say in the community. And I also know that this council has always said, and what we do around town, that we have the information tablets and we're going to put those up there. The go-kart guys, and I think it was them who said, I don't think it was a councillor, that we should look at the naming of that track that has been approved 3 times. And Councillor Moores, you were the one, Councillor Orban was right. You said, go ahead and make it in national size. Why are we going to do it? and the people who lived up the back and where that fence is, you need to wind up and have a look. That has been private land for a hell of a long time. And I think there's 25 to 30 metres between that fence. It's been up there for about 5 years. I'll stand corrected. And there is no fence outside that wire 2 metre fence that's there at the moment where the people are going to park for these events. Go up there in race weekend and see where all the cars are. People can still get around those roads. People are still walking around those roads. People up there are expected, and they do it. Our car crowd do it. They park on the areas where they're supposed to park and camp on the areas because cars have to get round. Emergency vehicles, the police, everyone has to move around. I've been up there plenty of times and looked around. That fence has been there for 5 years. 30 metres past that is private land. That was private land for a long time, but council now owns. So people haven't been, unless you were trespassing, you were going into private land a long time ago. Was people doing that, breaking the law of the land and trespassing? What we've got to consider is the facts in front of us. And we as all councillors, can I have more time?
You just have to tidy up there a little bit, Councillor.
We as councillors here to make a decision. And I respect everyone's point of view. And I was elected a long time ago to make decisions. Some people like my decisions, some don't. But please, there is so much documentation out there, read it. Talk to your fellow councillors, voice your opinion. Councillor Morse and myself have spoken a bunch of times about this lately, and it's great discussion. We don't always agree with each other. But then talk to the Aboriginal people and understand you've got the elders group, and you've got the Lands Council, and you've got a lot of individuals and people that live in the area that are pretty quiet. But I've had a number of them contact me to talk to me and give me advice. And they said, we'll take and show you roughly in areas we're talking about. We're not going to show you the site. So, yeah, there is two sides. There's actually three sides. Because within the Aboriginal people themselves, there's conflict. It's within ourselves here as councillors. We have conflict in respect that we disagree with each other.
Well, I've got to disagree with you.
So, councillors, we have a decision to make. We've done a lot of homework, and if you've done your homework, and I can't see anything at the moment, we will continue to respect the people and work with them moving forward, whoever you are, what your background is, and provide a facility that is respectful to all parties.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rudge, would you like to speak? Okay, Councillor Fry, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, thanks everyone for your input. It's very informative, and I don't agree with all of it, but I respect your right to articulate it here tonight. I would like to modify the motion in line with what the General Manager said in actually undertake a feasibility study of the new site. We could, I'm sure, do that internally, and I don't agree that it's problematic to move it down there because of services and roads, because a lot of those are in place and we already have dedicated a road down there under the Apex design.
Councillors, are you happy to have it worded that way? Well, I'll get the General Manager to do I know.
That part, no, what I'm saying is I'm happy to modify it to have a feasibility study undertaken in line with what the General Manager articulated. Also, we're dealing with the motion here.
Can I go point of order?
Sorry. Yes.
What's the order? I'll stand corrected on this, but if we got a notice of motion put before us, it is a notice of motion put before us. And in all my time here, I've never seen a notice of motion at other parts, Stuart. I thought what the debate was what the notice of motion is put in front of us. I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong, but point of order is I think the notice of motion is, I think what Councillor Fry is suggesting, I understand and accept, but the notice of motion is what I understand we're debating.
You're right. Now, finish off there, Councillor Fry.
I'm just asking, am I able to modify the motion at this point? And I'm saying I would agree to a feasibility study, and I would actually withdraw my original motion, and I also agree with Councillor Jennings. We put it to the people under the conditions of that survey, and that is a good way of settling our arguments in this council, is put it to the people. Put it to the people. If my colleagues...
Excuse me, I think you need to go back to the motion that you put in, the original motion. That's what we're dealing with.
But anyway, my comments are, I'm happy to do a feasibility study. I'm happy to put it to the people. as a vote, if my colleagues here are brave enough to do
No.
that.
No, I'm happy to put the motion to the councillors here now, which is here. You had to rewrite a reply. Are you finished? Okay, now I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? Carried. Lost. Thank you. We go to item number 11, rescission motions. There's none. Item number 12, councillors' delegate reports. Councillors, we go to that. Meeting with community groups on the 10th of June. Could I please have a mover and a second? Councillor North. Councillor Christians. Is there any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 14 will resolve into confidential committee of a whole. Councillor North, Councillor Christians. Are there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as to whether the matter should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee? As there's no representation, I now put the motion to go into confidential committee. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, could I have your attention? Councillors, we're back on recording here now. Item number 15. I'll get the General Manager. Could you please read out the motion?
Mr Mayor, Council has just recently met in confidential session and has recommended the following items. First one is to do with a aerodrome lease at the aerodrome with the Aero Club, and the council has resolved that council enters into a lease with Bathurst Aero Club for lot 13 DP 1024590 and lot 1 DP 1085658 PJ Moody Drive, Raglan, as detailed within this report. And B, enters into a licence agreement with Bathurst Aero Club for lot 11 DP 1024590 PJ Moody Drive, Raglan, as detailed within this report. Second item was a lease agreement at 12 Whiteman Place, and the council has recommended that council approves entering into a residential lease agreement for lot 127 in DP 249576 at 12 Whiteman Place, Bathurst, for a period of 12 months with a 12-month option at council's discretion as detailed in the report. The next item was to do with a rural licence agreement for lot 4040 O'Connell Road. It's recommended that council approves the renewal of a rural licence agreement at part lot 1009 DP 1250643, part lot 1 DP 624336 and part lot 3 DP 1127323, known as 4040 O'Connell Road, Bathurst, for a period of 3 years as detailed in the report and subject to council's land management guidelines and insurance requirements. The next item was a rural licence agreement at Stevens Lane. The council approves the renewal of the rural licence agreement for part lot 221 in DP 1147157 Stevens Lane, Kelso, for a period of 5 years as detailed in the report and subject to council's land management guidelines and insurance requirements. Next item was new event opportunity. Resolved that council submit an expression of interest to host the new event as detailed within this report. Financial statement 2019 Challenge Bathurst, that the information be noted. A request for financial assistance Harvest Cafe. That council, 1, note the request from Harvest Cafe, and 2, invite Harvest Cafe to provide any additional information they wish council to consider as part of their request for financial assistance. Then the next item was tender for preferred contractors, minor works. Resolved that council accepts the preferred contractor list for the engagement of contractors for minor works up to a value of $20,000, including GST, as listed in the Director of Engineering Services report, subject to submission of complete information being supplied for casual hire and in accordance with the general conditions of tender. The next item was walkway closure, Ryan Place, Kelso. That council approved closure of the walkway between Ryan Place and Bonner Street, Kelso, and upon closure classify the land as operational land. B, approve the registration of an easement to drain water 2.5 wide. And C, determine the value of the closed walkway land by applying the $1 square meterage rate of the adjacent land's value as determined by the Valuer General's Office, as detailed in the Director of Engineering Services report.
Councillors, we now need to adopt the items of the committee of a whole. Councillor Christians, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. The meeting closes now at 9:17. Thank you, councillors, for your attendance. But please have the recording device be turned off, please.